you miss me? I've been out of it comatose, but the depression is over.
Hello and welcome to Controlled Burns, the weekly hobbylist podcast from me, SlowBurne from Wildfire Gaming. Over the last couple of weeks, my wife and I have compared and contrasted the first two seasons of Game of Thrones with the first two books in the Song of Ice and Fire saga, and she returns today to talk about season 3 of the show.
Hi, Andrew. Thanks for having me.
Unfortunately, I haven't come anywhere close to finishing book 3 as of yet, so we're going to have to relegate our discussion to exclusively season 3 of the show this time, which, while perhaps disappointing for all of you book fans out there, is honestly a bit of a relief for me, as lining up all the show content with the books these last couple of weeks has been a lot more work than I expected, and it's taken a long time. But that said, while we will continue analyzing the show exclusively from here on through the end of it, Reagan and I will return to do more episodes on the books as I finish them.
Yes, I'll try to bite my tongue until then.
Yes. Now, I know the series as a whole is a huge discussion point online even today. So if you want to write in to discuss our findings, opinions, and theories, you can write into the podcast at controlledburnes with an ES at gmail.com.
If you have anything with book spoilers, just label them and I will keep them from Andrew until he is caught up.
Okay. Now, so yeah, we'll just go right into. I have less things to discuss this time in terms of we'll still follow the similar structure in that we'll do the recaps and just talk about that kind of is the bulk of the episode, and then I have my top moments to rank, and then I do of course rank the episodes, and then we have our growing dead character list, but mostly I'll just go over the ones that we didn't have before. But I'll give you the full thing just so you can see where they are in context.
Okay.
Okay, so the season starts with Sam, of all people.
Oh, Sam.
He's meeting up with the remainder of the Night's Watch force. Because he ran away at the end of the second, or he had been out in the. I don't even really remember where he came from. Oh, he and the
Gilly?
no, it's him and Ed and Grin are out kind of away from the fists at the end, and they find the dragon glass, and then they see the White Walkers coming, and they just run for it. But Sam's not as fast, so he gets separated from them.
Right.
And then he finally shows up. And so Lord Commander Mormont is now kind of starting to see that they are in deep with no cover here. And so he decides that they need to return to the wall and warn the rest of Westeros of the existence of the White Walkers, which they've now confirmed.
Okay, I have to say just one book thing here. And you have read the prologue, of course. So
Yes.
we'll mention this, but book spoilers for the prologue for the next, I don't know, minute. It's interesting that they start with Sam because the book starts with a prologue from a different Night's Watch member that is...
And his name is...
Chet?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Plotting to
But
kill
he's
Sam.
not the leader of the ones that are plotting to kill.
Their little coup. No, but he...
Although Chet, he really wants to kill Sam.
Really wants to kill Sam. Absolutely despises him. Says things horrible, deplorable
Which
thoughts
I feel like
him.
that was kind of translated to Rast in the show.
Okay,
Because
sure.
Rast definitely wants to kill Sam the most. But I forget the name of the guy who actually is in charge of the whole thing. I want to say it starts with a K or something.
Okay. Anyway, they're like, let's just cut that deplorable fuck and
put
Sam in there. Put the one everyone likes.
So at this point in the show, you do not know, if you've just been watching the show, that there is mutiny afoot.
Yes.
But you do if you read the book. Then we have Jon meeting Mance Rayder for the first time. So we're really north of the wall here at the beginning of this episode.
Okay, one more little book thing.
Mm-hmm.
Terrible omission of his singing.
Yeah,
it's hard.
Yeah, I think that is cool. I do like his characterization in the book a lot. I like the performance in the show, but
yes,
it doesn't really sing as much until later on because he's really not in season 3 a whole lot, as it turns out. Even though he's up there with them, there's not that many scenes between Jon and him.
Interesting.
Finally, we go to King's Landing and we have Cersei meeting with Tyrion. And they're kind of having one of their many fruitless conversations, and Bronn and Podrick show up. And Bronn is telling Tyrion if he's going to keep working for him, he's going to need to double his pay, basically just reintroducing those characters, I think.
Sure.
The purpose of the scene. And I guess the fact that Tyrion is back on the move, he's not veteran anymore.
Yeah.
Good
for him.
We have Davos being rescued from a small island by, I think it's Salladhor Saan's forces in the show.
Yes, because they were outside of the...
Well, they're not. There is no chain in the book or the show.
Sure, okay. They were outside of the Wildfire line of fire.
And so...
Because they were kind of supposed to just the flank.
They find Davos.
Which is very lucky for him.
Yeah, it certainly is. It goes a lot faster in the show than it did in the book. We had a whole drawn-out chapter of them suffering on that rock. Rob, we get some Rob. His forces arrive at Harrenhal, and they find that a massacre has taken place there, which I guess it was by Tywin. Well, we know that he killed a few people.
Yeah, I think that
It
was.
might have just been leftovers. They were like, oh, whatever, let's just leave. And all this other crap is fine. We just leave it rotting here.
I think it was implied that a big part of it was because of the attempt on his life. We know it was Jack and Hagar, but he was like, kill as many of them as you have to get to the bottom of this. And obviously they couldn't get to the bottom of it. It was a faceless man.
Right. Yeah.
He's not going to get caught. So they just hung a bunch of them and then he bounced.
But Rob shows up, and who does he find there clinging to life but Qyburn, who's the introduction of that character. And Talisa kind of resuscitates him. So good for that. Good for her. I'm very thankful that she did that. We go back to Tyrion, where he has this scene with Tywin where he asks him for Castle Rock, and Tywin does not let him down gently. We'll put it that way.
Yeah.
He really is just insulted by him even asking for such a thing.
He's like, I will reward you with something appropriate for.
Yeah, because he's like, Tyrion is feeling kind of hurt at this point because he's basically the reason that the city is still standing, but Tywin kind of came in and stole his thunder.
Mm-hmm.
Which, to be fair, they still probably would have lost. At least, and certainly in the continuity of the show, it looked like they were probably going to lose.
Yes,
Tyrion was knocked out.
They would have, without Tyrion's efforts, they would have
fallen
already. Yeah, so
right, that's true. He delayed them.
Tywin wouldn't have been able to take it back, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was definitely a critical piece of the defense, no question. We get Littlefinger meeting with Sansa, and he says that he might be able to take her with him when he departs on his next assignment.
How kind of him.
Mm-hmm. And then there's like a little bit of like Shay is talking with, I didn't even write this in my notes, but Shay's like talking with Roz about how they feel about that, but who cares? They suck.
Oh, yay, more Roz.
Yeah, they suck. Then we get more Daenerys. She is wandering around aimlessly, if you can believe it. No, not really. She's sailing. Well, she's sailing around aimlessly, frankly. They're deciding where they're going to go. It turns out to be Astapor, where she meets with Krasnus for the first time. And he's explaining to her about the Unsullied or Maid, if you want to call it that. And then this is also where she's a victim of an assassination attempt. I guess from Pyapri, who's still alive. Well, no, because he's been burned alive in the show. So in the book, I think he's still alive.
Yeah, I think it's
just the warlocks in general.
Is it the warlocks? Okay, I thought it might be. No, you're right.
In the show, it is.
Yeah, I thought it might be leftover.
In the book, it might be more attributed to Pyapri. But Barristan Selmy saves her from this assassination attempt.
Oh, I love Selmy.
Mm-hmm. Kills that scorpion thing, and then we have
earns her trust.
Yeah, we have Davos returning to Stannis, which Salador's son thinks is a terrible idea, but he goes anyway, and he gets arrested because he's pretty much I think he's pretty much made up his mind. He's going to try to kill Melisandre while he's up there, and he does pull a knife on her, even in the show, and
she just refuses to go down.
Yeah, she does, and so he's locked up, and then finally, to close out this episode, which is kind of interesting, is Marjorie of all people.
Oh, my girl,
and
my
she's visiting an orphanage, and then she kind of has this dinner afterward with Cersei and Joffrey.
She's a woman of the people,
and Cersei is like, I don't know if it's you got to be careful going around with those peasants because they almost killed us that time, the mob. And but Marjorie is just like she's just kind of navigates around that, and then Joffrey's just blowing her off. She's like, oh, Marjorie knows what she's doing, mother.
Which she does. I mean, she's ensuring that the people like her, and she will not be a target of a mob like that.
Well, I know, but I think there's some jealousy on Cersei's part.
Oh, absolutely. But it's also
the people
shows that she's underestimates the role of the people in the.
Yeah, Cersei's not one to care too much about that aspect.
It's a flaw of hers.
Yeah.
This might be a good place to say that Marjorie is one of my absolute favorites and one of the clearest examples of a show improved character. She is a much bigger character in the show.
There's definitely characters that are improved in the show, and there's characters that are improved in books. And I think main characters are improved in the show. Like I think that Ned Stark is better in the show than the book, for instance. We've talked about some of those. Whenever we go to the dead characters, that's where I really kind of do the final look at whether I think which one is superior. And there's probably the books probably have them on the majority, but there's definitely some characters that are better in the show.
Well, and I will say her acts of charity are obviously politically motivated,
Yes.
but it's a win-win compared to everyone else's political moves in the show and books in King's Landing. Like, she's killing it.
Yeah.
She uses it to her advantage, but she's also helping people, and you can't discount that just because she has multiple motives. She's just great.
Okay. Well, that's into that episode. So we go into the second episode, Dark Wings, Dark Words. Seems like some of the episode titles are very random, I feel, in this season. Some are not. Some are clearly pointed, but like,
Well, do we get an important raven?
I don't know. Well, let's see if you think that it makes sense. It starts with some great quality entertainment because we get Bran having another dream.
Oh.
And this time, Jojen appears in the dream, who has not been introduced yet in the show.
Yes, which I think is a mistake.
Yeah, because in the book, he's there for like half of the second book.
You get to build him up.
But not here. He just randomly shows up in this dream, and Bran has no idea who he is. And then Osha speaks for all of us when she tells him she's sick of hearing about these dreams. So good for her. I'm not a huge Osha fan, but I gotta say I do relate to her in this sequence. Really, this whole season she's kind of has that attitude. We have Roose Bolton bringing news that Bran and Rickon are missing, and that Catelyn's father is dying. He brings all this news to Catelyn herself.
See, that could be a Dark Wings.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
If it was a Raven and not Roose Bolton.
Yeah, so definitely the person that you want bringing you bad news. Sure, he was justly sympathetic about that. Then we get some Theon torture. So that's kind of ongoing through this whole season.
Yeah, it's one of the least pleasant parts of the season.
Yeah, this season surprised me a little bit on how I am going to come down on it.
Okay.
In this discussion, we get go back to Jaime and Brienne and their little expedition. They meet an elderly man on the road. Nothing else really comes of it yet. Jaime thinks that they should just take him out, but Brienne's like, what are you talking about? He's just an old man. Why would we do that? Then we have more of Cersei talking to Joffrey about how she's concerned about Marjorie, and she's not so sure about this, and Joffrey just blows her off. He's not interested in anything that his mother has to say.
Well, and he doesn't view Marjorie as a threat in any way.
No,
he's
totally.
Well, she's just a pretty woman. What's the problem here?
Okay, then we have the debut of another character, which is Olenna Tyrell in the Water Gardens.
Cheer. Oh God, I love her.
First, we have Loras bringing Sansa there, and Sansa's just having a grand day. And then she meets Olenna.
You have read this chapter in the books, and it's one of my favorites. It's such a delight to read.
Yes, very entertaining, very great character, and they did a pretty good job in the show trying to recapture that. Sansa's clearly shocked by some of the things she says, talking about how her son is useless and stuff. And I remember at one point Marjorie's like, "What will Sansa think of us?" And she's like, "Well, perhaps that we have some wits about us."
Yeah, it's much more brazen in the show because she's not using like a bard and
to cover it up.
To cover it.
But they're kind of in like a secluded area.
Yeah.
I guess this is where I didn't write in my notes here, but I guess this is where she's asking her about Joffrey, and she eventually comes clean like, "No, he's not good."
Yeah.
And they're like, "That's a pity." Yeah.
I will say it probably would have been annoying to have a bard singing over.
Sure. Yeah, it's probably the right move for sure. And for show purposes.
Just makes her slightly less shrewd.
Now back to Robb, we have Rickard Karstark talking to Robb. He tells him that he thinks the war is already over. And that he thinks it ended the day that he married Talisa, which is absolutely correct. But for viewers that are watching this for the first time, they're just like, it's feel like Robb blowing him off. Doesn't seem like anything's going too bad yet. But
sure,
they're starting to get pretty aimless out there. Then we have Catelyn having a scene. Oh man, I don't want to tip my hand about my ranking of the sequences, but this is where she kind of has that. It's with Talisa, although it doesn't really matter who she's talking to, but she's telling about that story where Jon Snow came down sick when he was a boy. And she has to she's like feels guilt about it because she prayed for his death.
That's a show original.
Yeah. Oh man. Definitely one of my favorite sequences. We'll see how high it ranks whenever we get to that. But I only included, I think, like season 2 I only included 8, and I think season 3 I only included 8 as well. Standout scenes to keep. which I will say I've already started doing my notes of season 4, and I've only done one episode, and I already have 3.
Wow.
So, and in season 1, I had like 20 something.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I have not been making these lists as
Right.
we go, which I kind of regret. It would have been fun to
No,
make,
you
but
would have never finished it. You have to have some speed.
I have no speed.
And I've spent hours doing this too, and and I'm fast.
You were the slow burns, and I am the slowest burns by
Mhm.
far.
We have a scene with John. It's not very important, but he meets that warg. I guess they're kind of introducing the idea of a warg here,
Sure.
but he's not a very interesting character. And then the Night's Watch is marching back to Castle Black, and Sam he just feels like he just can't keep going. He's just really weighing down. He just feels like he just wants to give up out there.
It's tough.
And Commander Mormon and his friends just pick his ass back up.
Yeah, very
So,
sweet.
There you go.
That one guy, isn't it Raph
It's Raph,
wants to leave him?
Yeah, definitely. He's
Raph.
He's like trying to get him to stay. Just give up. Anyway, it's
But
not
he
a very.
doesn't, because he's stronger than anyone gives him credit
These
for.
are some pretty forgettable scenes. This feels like filler content in a lot of ways. Some of this
Oh.
stuff. But yeah, they're building up the characters, I guess. But here we have Jojen and Mira showing up randomly, just in the woods. And they just decide they're going to join Bran's party. I remember when we were watching the show the first time, I did forget. I was like, where did these people even come from? Like, I couldn't remember this scene, which is understandable because it goes very fast and is totally random.
Whereas in the books, they're like introduced in court and have a whole formal, like, our father sent us.
Which is definitely a lot better. But at the same time, I can see how the showrunners wanted to minimize them as much as possible because they suck ass.
Well, maybe if we had more time to get attached to them.
Maybe.
And I like Mira.
I'm aware of that.
I think that you dislike Mira disproportionately because she's associated with Jojen, who you despise, which I understand.
Perhaps. We have Arya meeting the Brotherhood Without Banners, which is another not particularly interesting organization, if I'm going to be honest. But she spent some time with them this season. Definitely a downgrade from being Tywin's cupbearer, I have to say, for her.
Sure.
But it starts to pick up toward the end. We get some Shay content. She's concerned about Sansa's safety. Littlefinger interested in her.
That's nice. It's nice that someone's concerned about Sansa's safety.
Well, I think Roz is kind of the one that plants the seed. Like, I don't know about that. Might want to watch out for that one.
Sure.
She's not being very loyal tool of Littlefinger's, that Roz. Hope that doesn't come back to bite her. Then we have Marjorie having a scene with Joffrey. This is an interesting scene because this is the first time that we see Joffrey really trying to be threatening with her, where she like walks in and he's got the crossbow, and it's like he's definitely we've seen him in this setting before where like with the it's that horrible scene with the horrors that come in, but like he like tortures them, basically forces them to torture themselves. And he's threatened Sansa with a crossbow, and she reacted with horror, as not in the room, but like there's that point where he's having Meryn Trant beat the shit out of her and stuff, and like he's pointing the crossbow at her.
Yeah.
But here,
she handles
no problem.
Masterfully.
She just completely disarms him by pretending to be interested in it. She even shoots a bolt through like the little pig, because I think there's the boar head of the thing that killed what's that guy's name?
Who are you talking about?
Robert, yeah.
Oh,
the boar that killed Robert
Bobby B.
is like I think his head is hanging in Joffrey's room.
Weird.
Yes.
Strange man.
Yes.
Boy.
And then Marjorie shoots it with a bolt.
God, she's so good.
Yeah. And he's loving it. He's like, great. He's somebody that's as sadistic as I am.
Plays him like a fiddle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, hook, line, and sinker. He's very into this.
Whereas with Sansa, like you kind of view it as like she is completely helpless in this situation, but it shows like there are ways to work around this kind of little shit.
That's right.
Not to blame Sansa, of course.
Speaking of little shits, we have more Jojen, and he's telling Brands that his dreams are real. They actually have some meaning behind them, and he's the one thing that matters. That's a phrase that he uses here.
The one thing that matters. We'll see how they follow through on that.
Yeah, I'm sure that it's really satisfying. Then we have more of the Brotherhood, and they've decided they're gonna let Arya and her friends go. They don't really care about them. But then, because they don't know who she is. But then who walks in? Well, I mean, he's tied up, but who do they reveal as their other prisoner? As the Hound, who identifies her immediately.
Yeah.
He's like, "What are you doing?" It was like, "How did you get the Stark pitch or something like that?" And then that there, her cover's totally blown. So
Mhm.
that's kind of her cliffhanger for this episode, I guess. And then the final sequence here in this episode is Jamie and Brienne, and they're kind of crossing this bridge, and he gets his hand on one of her swords. And so his hands are still tied up, but they actually have a little duel here on the bridge, battle on the bridge, if you will.
Pretty great.
And she is winning. And then
Mhm.
they're interrupted when that old man from earlier shows up with some of Roose Bolton's men. Although I don't know if it's revealed that we know that they're Roose Bolton's men, but we know that they're Northmen, obviously. I don't know if
Mhm.
they're carrying the X's or not. It's the only way you'd know, I guess.
Yeah, I don't remember.
But
We know
I
it's
wouldn't be
no
surprised
good.
because they definitely use the X's more in season 3 as they're kind of building up these Boltons, which
Yes.
is needed for what happens later. I still don't feel like I think a lot of people probably miss a lot of that. Like Roose Bolton kind of comes out of nowhere for a lot of people.
Well, I remember when we watched for the first, or you watched for the first time, I was kind of quizzing you on like,
Yeah.
what's that sigil?
Yeah, I was definitely. I don't think that he would have stuck with me as much, and with Brett for sure. I don't
Yeah.
think, but Brandon, we did a better job. I think where he understood who Reese Bolton was. But anyway, that's the cliffhanger there where they get captured by the Bolton men.
I keep
So
forgetting you can't hear me nodding.
so that was Darkwing's Dark Words. So at best, I guess it was Reese Bolton's
I
needs
guess
to
he got a
capture.
letter and then
Yeah.
whatever.
Anyway, episode 3 is called The Walk of. I think it's called The Walk of Punishment. At first, I was mistaking it for The Walk of Shame, which obviously is much later.
Yeah.
But yeah, this
Or the
episode is
Walk of
called
Atonement.
The Walk of Punishment. So we'll see how you feel about that.
Huh.
We get some Edmure, the debut of this character, and the Blackfish, where they're at the funeral, and Edmure is already being portrayed as a complete idiot who can't hit his father's, I guess, casket. I don't really know what's floating in the water there, but his cairn
Now we
with the
talked
flaming arrow.
we talked before about characters that we really see as an actor in a different thing and not.
Oh, and Edmure is one of them for you?
Well, he's one that I am intimately familiar with from something else. He's a villain in Outlander, but he's so different in that one that I have to remind myself I really do see him as Edmure, which is cool. Unlike Jojen, who I absolutely see as the kid from Maze Runner,
Hmm.
and oh, who is it? Lancel, I see as the kid from House of Anubis,
Hmm. Yeah.
which is not a show known for its great acting. But
And yet he's in. Oh, that's Lance. Okay. The Jojen seems like he's in a lot of stuff.
oh, definitely.
Then so it kind of goes from bad to worse for Edmure because he's just humiliated himself in front of everybody, not being able to hit that arrow, and then he gets chastised by Rob for not following his orders in the war because he like takes this mill or whatever, which we don't see that happen. But I think in the book they kind of explain him doing that more because through the eyes of Catelyn, she's there when he's doing those things. I think, or not with him, but she knows that he's going out and doing some battling.
Yeah.
But with Rob, he's just pissed off that he took that mill. He wanted to draw the mountain into the west.
Yeah, he's trying to do more than his share. Like he's trying to help, but he just ends up
He's just a fuck up.
backfires.
Yeah,
He's more of an oaf in the
they
show
just
for
decided.
sure.
Yeah, they just decided to make him a complete ass in the show.
Yeah, it was
Uh,
kind of fun.
I guess to me he's not. He's just a nothing. I don't think he's a very good character in the show.
No, he's not a good character. I just mildly enjoy when he's on screen.
And then we have a small council meeting where Tywin's asking about Jamie's whereabouts. Nobody knows. Even Varys doesn't know where he is, or at least he's not saying where he is.
Hmm.
So, and then he's frustrated by that. And then he's like, "Well, you guys need to redouble your efforts, or whatever. How you guys are useless to me if you can't even figure out where my son is." And then they also discuss that Littlefinger has been betrothed to Lysa Arryn. So this is kind of the reveal of that information. And so Tyrion is being appointed Master of Coin in his place, which Cersei is just delighted by. But I don't really know why that's supposed to be a slight. I guess it's a downgrade from the Hand of the King, obviously, but that was a given considering Tywin's here now. He was only ever Hand of the King in Tywin's stead.
Sure.
So I don't really see why they think it's such an insult.
I don't know. I guess like he was a big part of a battle, so maybe Master of War would have been more suited. It's also just she gets to sit up there by Tywin, and
Sure.
there's a whole power struggle going on.
We get a scene where Jamie and Brienne are taken to the Northerners' camp. I guess probably by now we probably know that they're the Boltons, but there's nothing really here other than they're getting taken to the camp and they're not happy about it.
Sure. Who would be?
And then we have Arya and Gendry setting off with the Brotherhood, and this is actually where they leave Hot Pie behind at the end.
Oh, and honestly, good for hot pie. Like,
Yeah,
bake your bread.
makes his bread.
I love hot pie.
We have a little scene that I often overlook and kind of forget, and it's good. It's not like list worthy or anything, but it's where it's just Catelyn and the Blackfish, just kind of reconnecting about things, and haven't seen each other in a while, I guess. And he's sort of telling her that she's got to stay strong for Rob, that's because she's not having a great time right now. Her father just died. Her
Yeah.
sons are missing.
The Blackfish is cool. He's, the black sheep of the Tullys. He had a strained relationship with his brother who just died, but very affectionate with his nephews and nieces, or nephew and nieces. I like him. We don't get a ton of them.
No. We have a scene where who I like to call Martin Tommen Lannister is being mended by Talisa because it is the actor that goes on to portray Tommen later in the show.
Yeah.
And he does not look that different. Like he's obviously a little bit younger, but man, he just looks exactly like Tommen if you have seen the show before.
Yeah.
So that's kind of jarring. And then
related.
Sure, whatever. And then we have the wildlings. So with Jon. They're coming upon a bunch of dead horses arranged by the White Walkers at the Fist of the First Men. And
Why did they arrange them like that? Nah, don't worry about it. We'll
It's just a
never
show
find out.
thing. Yeah. Always the artists. Someone, one of them says.
Sure.
And then this is where I guess that kind of confirms. Well, they went up there to kind of take out the Night's Watch, I guess, but they realized they've already got the hell out of there. And so
Yeah.
this is where the king is like, "All right, Tormund, go climb that wall." And Tormund's like, "Great, no problem. It's to me, to him, it's just another day."
Yeah.
And so John's gonna go do that, and Egret's gonna go, and this is where he says that he's gonna light the big fire whenever he's announcing that he's attacking the wall, and that's it. We don't see him again for the rest of the season.
Well, might have been a little underutilized.
Yeah. Then we go to the Night's Watch where they're back in Crasters. It's a delightful little place. Gilly's giving birth.
Oh, Gilly.
And Craster's not too nice about it. Says that she should gag on a rag or something.
He's the worst.
Yeah. And then we have a great moment for Theon where he is set free from his imprisonment by somebody we don't know who it is.
Yeah. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. And then we also have Melisandre departing from Dragonstone. And at this point, I don't know, it's kind of a weird scene where Stannis is kind of like, I don't know, he's sort of wanting to create some more shadow babies there. And she's like, well, there's no more of that, so we need to go. We need a new strategy.
Yeah, our shadow baby bar is running low.
Apparently. So she does not say where she's going. She's just like, I'm leaving right now. And so he thinks that she's like abandoning him because it's not looking too good after he lost that battle. So we'll see. We have
only hope.
We have okay, so this kind of happens twice in this, or it happens again at the beginning of season 4, but she's coming upon the Walk of Punishment. I guess this is instead of, so when she's going to Marine in season 4, they have like the little girls that are nailed to the signposts. But in this one, it's not little girls, it's just people. I guess like slaves that tried to run away. I don't know.
We're talking about Daenerys.
Yeah, but it's more people being crucified. So this is what, she doesn't say it out loud, but this seems to be what convinces her to buy the Unsullied.
Yes, she is not a fan of innocent speaking.
Right. And so she decides that she's going to use Drogon to do it, which all of her advisors are like, it's a terrible idea.
Like, not use him with fire, but trade him for the army.
I don't know. They're not very bright, those guys. They couldn't figure out what was going on there.
Well, I think they just underestimated her.
Or it seems like she could just be like, well, of course, I'm just going to have her burn him alive whenever. Anyway.
You mean her allies aren't very bright? Yeah. They don't see it coming?
Yeah. But it also is dumb on her part not to say. They're trying to be mysterious for the show's purposes, is what this is. It's manufactured drama.
Okay.
It's a lot of that with Daenerys. Anyway.
I don't know. I think that them underestimating her is kind of reasonable. They're like, oh, she's so desperate for this army that she's willing to trade one of her children.
She literally does. Like, those dragons are with her every second of the day. There's no way that she's going to trade a dragon. No one watching this show believes for a second she's giving a dragon to that guy.
I don't know.
I think it's contrived. Tyrion takes the realm's ledgers from Littlefinger in his brothel, which is where he keeps his ledgers, and he's given him some tips.
Any chance to see brothel scenes?
Well, actually, I don't think you see any women in here.
Oh,
You might see. Well, Podrick is there, and this is the scene where Tyrion, like, I guess you see him in that sense because he now that he's like kind of in the brothel, I guess he's like gives Podrick his reward for saving him in the battle. And so then he's like, it just immediately cuts to him with Bronn, and he's like looking at the finances. He's like, man, this is fucked. We are in debt here. And Bronn's like, he's not too worried about it. And then Podrick shows up, and he's got his payment, gives it back to Tyrion, and they're just baffled by this.
He's like, they wouldn't take it.
And so they like sit him down and give him some wine, and they're like, we need to know everything that happened in there. And
we never get answers.
We never,
to
yeah, truly get answers. But
there is a theory I like that I can share with you if you
okay, yeah, sure.
Which is that he sang to them.
Oh,
which I think is very sweet.
No, okay, that seems unlikely. When do we ever hear Podrick sing?
I think. Don't we hear him sing in season 8? Is that him?
Oh Jesus! Well, that's so long, it might never get here.
Well, I really like that idea because you just can't fathom what he did in the bedroom. That's so like blew them away.
That is definitely not the. That's not the way it's.
Voice.
That's not the way it's portrayed.
Well, but that's why it would be like no one assumes that. Everyone assumes that it was something, but prostitutes, sex workers, excuse me. It would be hard to blow them away.
It would, but apparently Podrick did.
I think with his angelic voice.
I disagree. We have.
Oh, you don't like that?
Theon being saved by Ramsay. Like Ramsay actually like kills some people that like because he gets caught out in the woods, and then Ramsay like kills him and sets him free even again.
What a hero!
Yeah, isn't that crazy? Yeah, what a drawn out sequence that is. This is a lot of more filler than I thought there was in season 3.
I don't know. I think this escape with Theon is important for his psychology.
Yeah, it is, but it's just so. I mean, this is like a multiple episode arc of this happening, which I guess is better than torture, but I don't know. It's just this is
that is the bar.
There's some stuff that drags in this season more than I thought.
A lot of stuff that's left up to the imagination in the books.
Yeah,
that you get to linger on for a long time.
And then the finale of this episode is Jaime convincing Locke and his men not to rape Brienne, which is kind of what's going on in the darkness. And they stop, but then he ends up overplaying his hand and then losing it.
Yeah.
And that's the big cliffhanger.
He does something for someone other than himself.
Well, that's the part.
He
would have been fine if he had just stopped there, but then he started trying to get him to feed him and like cut him loose, and he just went way too far.
Yeah.
So that's too bad for him. Episode 4 is what was that episode?
It's more than too bad for him. It's like his whole identity is wrapped up in his ability as a.
Yeah, I know. It's a disaster. The Walk of Punishment is what that was called. I guess that was that's the referencing the Daenerys thing where she comes upon those guys being crucified.
Not the best title.
No. Episode 4, which is kind of a spoiler, really, is and now his watch is ended. So we know what that's referencing. But first we get some more of Jaime and Brienne suffering in the hands of the Bolton men, as everyone does. You do not want to be captured by the Boltons. And then we have Varys telling Tyrion, "Oh, this is an interesting scene. This is I don't know if this is in the book. It's definitely not from what I've read so far. I don't think. And it's where Tyrion, like, he comes in to ask Varys something, and then he just gets totally sidetracked by Varys he's kind of having a moment in here, which Tyrion doesn't realize. And he's like telling this story about the guy that cut him in Essos or whatever, and how he's like, never forgot him, and he never forgot about how he talked to the flames and something answered that has haunted him. And then he opens this box to reveal that there he is, the guy that did all that to him. And he's just like, "Hello, old friend." It's just like this. He's kind of like, it's kind of an alarming scene in a way. Like he's a very patient man when it comes to getting his revenge.
Yeah, so it's an example of Varys playing the long game.
Yeah, I think he's kind of juxtaposing that with like Tyrion is asking him. He's convinced that Cersei is the one that ordered that guy to try to have him killed, and he's like wants to get revenge on her, and he wants to just figure out what's going on. And he goes to Varys, the person that knows the most. And he's like, well, I'm sure that you can get vengeance yourself one day if you like. Just gotta have patience, basically. It's like, well, anyway, it's a very interesting scene.
Yeah.
We have Sam talking to Gilly because they're at that camp. That's another thing that drags is this boy. They spend a lot of time in Craster's in this. We're on episode 4 and they're still there. And she's had her baby and she's upset because it's a boy and she knows what that means.
Sure. And to remind the audience what that means.
Well, yeah. So in episode 2, we see Craster taking the baby out into the woods, and John kind of does some stealth and tracks him, and then he realizes
a different baby
that he's sacrificing them to the White Walkers.
Yes, the boys, the girls.
We don't know yet what the White Walkers are doing with them.
Yes, but that's enough for it to be like she was really hoping for a girl, because the worst case there is terrible incest and grooming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, she's so she asked Sam if he can help, and I don't know what she expects Sam to do, but we'll find out later. We have some more dreaming with Bran. I didn't even bother. Like at this point, I'm just so over that crap. Just acknowledge that it happens.
Yeah, dream sequences.
They're terrible.
They're not the best in the book, but they are hard to translate to the screen, and they are cut down.
Thank God. We get some Roz. And she's this is kind of a good episode for Varys. He's already gotten his revenge on that guy. Now he's like meeting in covertly with Roz, who's like kind of telling him about what Littlefinger's doing. And particularly, she breaks some interesting news to him, which is that he's planning to take Sansa with him when he leaves on his little trip to the Vale, Lysa Arryn. And
yeah, I think Roz is fully a spy for Varys.
Oh yeah, definitely. It happens at the end of season 2, and he's like. She like gives him the way that she communicates it. She like gives him this like the ledger that of all the stuff that he's planning on bringing. He's like, "Am I missing something obvious?" And then he's got 2 feather beds, and so he's like, "Look at that!" So he's gonna use that information and he uses it fast. But first we have Marjorie just kind of continuing to build her rapport. Joffrey. I think this is the scene where he actually spoils something that happens in House of the Dragon.
Oh my gosh, yeah, we were like, oh.
They're in the Sept of Baelor here.
Because I'll say I have read Fire and Blood up to where we are in House of the Dragon. So I have tried very hard to avoid spoilers for how Fire and Blood ends or how the arc of House of the Dragon will end. But there's a few things I haven't been able to avoid.
Yeah, that's
and
one.
There's a major one. If you're rewatching the series and don't want to be spoiled for House of the Dragon, skip this scene.
Yeah, because it's really not that important. It's just kind of confirming that Marjorie has totally got him around her finger at this point. And then like Olenna and Cersei are also there, and they don't get along very well, if you can believe it. Then we have Theon and Ramsay. So like he has like this, I don't know, Theon. He's still kind of, I feel like they're still kind of playing him for jokes in some ways, but this is where he's like really he's kind of like having a moment where he's like, man, I really did some dark stuff and I really, really screwed, my family. And I really feel bad about that. And of course he's confessing all this to Ramsay Bolton, who could not care less.
Well, and he could care because he finds out key information.
Yeah, but not here. Oh yeah, I guess it is here where he finds that out that he didn't actually kill Bran Orcon, but he did kill 2 innocent boys.
Yeah, but that's huge that the heirs to Winterfell are still yeah.
But anyway,
I'm sorry. They're the heirs.
Yeah.
Second and third.
And so, but anyway, this is at the end of the scene where it's revealed that, in fact, he's brought him back to be tortured some more. They got the X ready to go.
Yeah, and so this is important psychologically because he has shown that even if you think you have an escape opportunity, it could just be me fucking with you, so don't try.
Right. Yep. That's exactly what happens. And then Jamie is just despondent here with he's lost his hand. Like you said, he's like totally lost. Like his big identifying thing is his ability to be a sword fighter and stuff. And he's like not eating. And Brienne actually convinces him, you got to keep going. You got to learn. If there's anything that keeps you going, it's revenge. And so
which he feels for Stannis.
Right. And so he starts eating. We have Tywin telling Cersei. So like Cersei kind of comes to him and she's like, which I think is important for the audience too, in a way, this scene, because she's sort of speaking for the audience here, where she's like, now you're sitting here in King's Landing. Obviously we appreciate you coming to bail our asses out against Stannis, but Jaime's out there. Like, what are you doing to help him? And he's like, do you realize that I put together an entire war to bring Tyrion back? He's like, what do you think that I would do for Jaime? And this is while he's writing a letter, by the way.
What would I do for the son I like?
Yeah, exactly. And he's like, and she's like, all you can? He's like, all I can. And like, it almost immediately like stamps the letter.
Yeah.
It's like, oof. You know what he's doing there. It's pretty significant.
It's an important letter.
Yeah. And then he also just sort of insults her intelligence and her lack of control over Joffrey. He's very on his high horse here in this seat as they handle the king.
It's very rude man.
Not very impressed with the way that his family has been handling themselves in his absence.
Yeah.
This is where we have so again, Varys is going, he's like, how can I weaponize this information about Littlefinger planning to take Sansa? I don't even know that he really cares that much. I think he feels an affinity for the Starks just because they totally got screwed, and for one thing, but he also had respect for Ned.
Mm-hmm.
And so he goes to Olenna.
Well, and the reason that Ned confessed
which was his
Sansa safe.
Which he was basically convinced to do by Varys.
Yes. So he probably has some degree of investment in her well-being.
Yeah. So he goes to Olenna and he says, what if he kind of plants this idea of her marrying Sansa, basically just to steal him away from Littlefinger. And she's just like, wow, you must hate him. And he's like, actually, I kind of enjoy him, but he's a like massive threat.
Yeah. Which is I would be great for Sansa, it'd be great for the Tyrells.
Yeah, and so immediately Olenna's into it, so she tells Marjorie, I think that's just off screen, but then Marjorie brings the news to Sansa. She's loving the idea.
Yeah, and she's tactical about it, but she doesn't have to be. Like, Sansa
right.
is in love with the idea.
Yeah.
She thinks, oh, I'm sorry, never mind. I was thinking a book thing, but it would be to marry Loras.
Right, but in this show, it is actually to marry Loras.
Yeah.
In the book, it's not, but it's the other brother.
The show cut Tyrells, which is a crime.
It's understandable.
They didn't
know.
cut
The important ones.
You don't.
They didn't cut the women.
That's true.
Okay, and then we have a big sequence. The reason this episode is named is the kind of the explosion of the Night's Watch, where that guy whose name I forget, feel like it starts with a K. He basically like incites. I could be wrong with that, but he basically incites Craster. Like Craster's kind of talking that shit like he always is, and he's just like
sets him off.
He just like totally sets like he's just like just kind of lays it out like it is. You're a daughter fucking bastard. I don't know. And
down his filter.
Yeah, and then Crasher comes at him and he just stabs his throat right because he's like a dagger user, this guy, and he's like really quick on the draw. He just stabs him right in his face, and then Lord Commander Mormon is like, Jesus, I cannot believe this is happening. And then he gets stabbed in the back, and he almost kills Rast. Actually, I think it's Rast that gets the first hit in on him, but then he's like choking him out.
It's full on mutiny.
Then he gets stabbed in the back again, and yeah, we lose Lord Commander Mormont. Pretty significant death here.
And Sam gets the fuck out of there.
Oh yeah, Sam's just like, well, fuck this, I'm out of here, and which is the right move because Rast like leaves the hut looking for him. Mm-hmm. Like he definitely wants to kill him, and he takes Gilly and the baby, and they're going to the woods. It's into that. And then we have so this whole time with the Brotherhood, Arya's been with Thoros of Myr specifically. And he brings Gendry and the Hound to this hideout. It's like in a cave somewhere. And this is where they actually meet Beric Dondarrion, who we knew from season 1. Very, very briefly. He's in one scene.
Yes, because Ned sends Beric and Thoros to...
Well, he doesn't even send Thoros in that scene, but he sends Beric. You actually see Beric on screen. Yes. It's a different actor, but that's fine because he's close enough.
But he sends him to go like...
kill them out.
Yes, defend the Riverlands, which the mountain has been pillaging.
He specifically said, go bring the mountain to justice.
Yes, but it's because of the unjust behavior in the Riverlands. So they have...
Pulse Knight sent Gregor Clegane, he calls him.
Heft up this order request, like this mission, even well after Ned's death.
Right. Yes, that's correct. And so that's kind of, I guess, good news for Arya in a sense. But, and then... they're kind of having this. They kind of have like a little trial there. Not a very formal one, obviously, but they're like, the Hound, you're a dirty criminal. You've been working with the Lannisters. You probably need to be put to death. Well,
and Arya makes an accusation.
Well, yeah, that's finally what gets him because like every accusation they throw at him, he's like, well, like you're not any better, and like he has a comeback for like everything that they say, and they're like, oh, well, maybe he's got a point. And then Arya's like, you killed Micah, And there was basically no defense for that one.
Well, his defense would be, I did it under orders.
Well, that's what he
from my
said,
prince,
but that's not enough for Derek. And he's like, "All right, yeah, so you don't deny it?" He's like, "We got it." And so he sentenced him not to death, but to a trial by combat.
And Micah, of course, is the butcher's boy, a child.
For episode 2.
Mm-hmm.
It's cool about how like that's not he's obviously not a significant character at all, but it's coming back to haunt him here, the Hound.
This is the reason the Hound is on Arya's list.
Right. And so she's thrilled. She's like, all right, Brotherhood. Like at this point, I think she's feeling a little bit optimistic. She doesn't say this. Like she's still definitely not thrilled to be in their custody, but she's like, well, maybe these guys are okay if they're gonna sentence the Hound here.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's kind of where she is. And then at the end of this episode, it's a pretty good closer, I gotta admit, is Daenerys getting the Unsullied and all that stuff. I still think it's a little bit contrived with how, this is like the second she walks in there. Even me watching the show for the first time, obviously I knew that this was how it was going to go. I didn't know it was going to be done with such style.
Sure. Well, the reveal that she speaks the language.
That is a good reveal.
He's been talking shit the whole time.
That's true. That actually might be my favorite part about it.
Missandei has been translating.
Yes.
And a more
yeah, she's been cleaning up his. It's like when Axl Rose is do it. There's like this. They did this tour in I don't know South America somewhere, and he kept being pissed off at this crowd. Because like I don't know if it's just like a South American thing or maybe it happened a lot at a lot of their shows, but it was just more entertaining in this saga because people were like throwing stuff on stage a lot, and he was just like that was a no with Axl Rose, and he would not abide by that. But he couldn't speak to them because they're all speak Spanish, so they actually had a Spanish interpreter that toured with them. It was always the same woman that toured with them and like would speak to them, and then like he would be like, "If you want to throw another fucking bottle." We will go home. And then like she's like cleaning up his language. Like at one point he's like, if you see someone beside you throwing something, beat the fuck out of them or whatever. And she's like, pétenlo, or like we don't know exactly what she's saying, but she's obviously cleaning up his language.
Yeah.
For sure. Anyway, so that's kind of what she's been doing with Krasus. But then it turns out she actually understood what he was saying all along. And I do like that. I actually think Krasus is pretty entertaining in the way that he's done in the show.
Yeah, I really love that language part because it's an example of her being underestimated. But she pretends like she's gonna trade the dragon. She hands him the chain.
Yeah.
And then she's like, no, dragons can't be chained, Dracarys, which is what she's been training the dragon to do is breathe fire on command. So it's her first time actually.
No, her first time was Pirate Pre.
Oh.
Yeah, that's a worse scene.
Yeah.
But anyway, now she's got the Unsullied. And then at the end, she even throws the little whip.
But the other part of it is she has the Unsullied turn against their master. So it's not just her dragon. It's they fight for their own freedom.
Well, yes. She still has because there's like this thing where as long as you hold the whip, then they will obey you. So she still has the whip whenever when she tells them to kill the masters, and they don't have a choice in that. Like because they're following their master, or whatever. Okay. And then after that scene where she like lines them up outside, and she's like, "All right, I'm gonna get rid of this whip. You guys want to fight for me anyway?" And like they start banging on the grass or whatever,
which is cool. She gives them a choice. She shouldn't just
I think
continue making them slaves.
I think they make the point later that it's like, okay, yeah, you get rid of the like on paper they're free, but realistically, like, what are they gonna do?
Leave?
Yeah, well, I don't. They've been like you can say that, but like we've learned from this guy who explains how it's done. Like they have been completely broken down psychologically. They're very similar to the clone army in Star Wars.
Sure.
And so
a lot more harsh than that.
Yeah, definitely. But I think that's kind of some of the themes that they're trying to touch on in that show, which we'll probably get more of it the deeper into it we get.
Yeah, I mean the clones didn't have to like raise puppies and then kill them.
No, they did not.
From its mother's arm.
No, they did not have to do that, but they have done so. They have been kind of bred to just be soldiers and expendable.
So I hear your point, but on principle, it's a risk.
I'm gonna go out on
she could have lost her army. They could have all left.
Yeah, it was not much of a risk. I feel. Okay. I think it's overstated how much of a benevolent move this is. But I will say I'll go out on a limb and say I think the clones are superior to and with more depth than the Unsullied. The only Unsullied that we ever get any depth with is Grey Worm.
Sure.
Anyway, but it's a great scene. I definitely I think pretty clearly her best scene up to this point in the show is her getting the Unsullied army.
Yeah, I definitely think that's her. I mean, I don't know, her dragon hatching sacrifice is pretty good, but
It's
it might be better.
it's fine, but to me, I mean,
Even though it's so
I
predictable
guess
to
if
you.
you don't know, yeah, it was, but it's still executed well. And like the dragon thing, I guess if you didn't know, like if you're watching season 1 in a vacuum, like when it came out, and you didn't know that there were going to be dragons, then I guess that would be more exciting. But if you know that, then that's the only thing that's exciting about it, really.
Hmm.
But her getting like this army, like that, it's huge for. And I remember I might have been at this point where Brandon was like, "Wow, she's going to be a problem
Yeah.
if she ever gets over there." Anyway, so that's the end of that episode. It is a good conclusion. That's definitely a great episode right there. I'll rank pretty highly, I think, at the end here. Going on to episode 5. This is called "Kissed by Fire."
Hmm.
We have the trial by combat with the Hound versus Beric Dondarrion, and the Hound kills his ass. But
Yeah.
then Thoros of Myr quickly revives him.
And Arya is devastated because she's been like
Yes, she
screaming,
is
like,
furious. She just
Yeah.
cannot believe that he's gonna that he was able to be victorious, and it's not looking good for him at first because like Beric's doing his little fire sword trick, which is if it was in Fire Emblem, that would definitely be a weakness of the Hound, but
Yeah.
it doesn't work.
But it's a very
Although he's like on
interesting-
fire by the end, like he actually like sets him on, like the Hound is burning at the end when he wins.
which of course is his biggest fear because of his
Yeah, I love that. I
childhood.
think that's a great character.
But it's also a very interesting, not starting point, but kind of starting point for this season for Arya and the Hound's relationship. She is screaming for someone else to kill him, like so desperate for vengeance against him. And so their evolution throughout the rest of the season is really interesting.
Yeah,
Or does it go into season 4?
Oh yeah, definitely. But
Okay.
it's still they're together doing the beginning of their Last of Us arc in season 3.
Okay, so we won't mention how their arc ends,
Sure.
because I think we're going to try to avoid spoilers past the season we're talking about.
Yeah,
But
it definitely continues past season 3. But anyway, that's a pretty cool thing. Anytime you have a trial by combat, it's very entertaining. They generally just kind of get better the later you go. I in some ways you could argue that the one with Braun and that other guy is more important, is better, but I don't know. Like this one, it's like two characters that you actually like. You don't care about the other guy or even really Braun much in that first one. It's like you want Tyrion to not be killed by these people for something he didn't do, so you're pulling for Braun. But in this one, it's more like you actually know these two people that are fighting.
yeah,
And you don't know them super well, like you haven't seen a lot of Beric in particular. So I think the inclination is to either pull for the Hound or at least be kind of more interested in his fate here.
yeah, I do think the show could have built up Beric better. Like I definitely didn't keep track of who
This
he
is
was
this
my
is
first
it.
watch through.
This is it. Like this is their build up for him. Is these scenes?
Sure, I just know like anytime he was on screen, I didn't remember who he was. And Thoros the first time I watched.
Yeah, I definitely didn't make the connection my first watch. This is the guy that is on screen in season 1 when Ned sends him off.
Which you'd think he would be more memorable considering he
Well,
continues coming back to life.
It is a
but-
different actor than in season 1. But it kind of still works because he's been, like as they reveal here, he's been killed and brought to life like several times at this point. So it would make sense that he would look a little rougher.
Yeah. But I don't know, they don't give him a ton of personality traits outside of
No, they
that.
don't. Yeah, he's definitely I think he's cool. He's a good actor and he has good voice, but yeah, he's not the most interesting character. We have John finally having sex with Ygritte in the cave.
Oh, really
Big
good
moment for him.
stuff. I mean, clearly we have some consent issues here that they
Yeah, he is. Well, I mean, at this point, technically, he's not their prisoner. I mean, in his mind, he kind of is, but like they've freed him as long as he kind of proves himself to them, which he hasn't really had the chance to disprove.
Well, this is
himself yet.
part of him proving himself is
Sure.
being intimate with a
But
woman.
only to
Like,
her.
in
Like the rest of it's not like the rest of them are there.
Yeah, I think in the books the consent is more dubious.
Hmm.
Like he's definitely backed into it. But in the show, very sexy stuff.
Yeah, and then
I would say one of the best and most necessary sex scenes in the whole show.
oh yeah, definitely better than those season 1 ones. At this point, it's really season 1 and season 2, I think, where they're particularly. I mean, there's some bad ones in there, but by season 3, I think they've kind of gotten away from that. Like
Yeah.
they're more. I mean, we do have one later on with
Well-
Melisandre that I don't think you like very much, but that one, I think there's still at least like some stuff happening rather than just exposition, or even worse, no exposition at all. Like it's just like that
Well,
torture
this-
scene with with Joffrey.
Well, this one obviously doesn't have exposition, but it has
No, this is
emotional
character
weight
development.
and
Yeah,
character. Yeah.
This is much better than
And obviously it's symbolic of John seeing humanity in the wildlings who initially he viewed as just the enemy
that
of the
is
savages
important as
across the
well.
wall.
But this is all of this is very important for John's character without question.
And Ygritte is the namesake of the episode. She is the one kissed by fire.
Ah,
because of her red hair.
yes. Now, we don't have to go into a huge tangent here. These characters will continue on to season 4, but I don't think I like Ygritte as much as you do.
I
like her fine.
I definitely am influenced by the amount of chemistry that those actors have, which I'm sure most of you know this, but they get married outside of the show after filming this and have a kid together, and so cute.
Sure.
Adorable. So that chemistry is real. And
Yeah.
I'm sold. Even though I think that the best, least, maybe only in no way problematic couple in the show or the books is Gilly and Sam.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we have the Brotherhood letting the Hound go, and Arya is just disgusted by this. She just cannot believe that they're going to let him go.
Yeah.
Just pissed off, but nothing she can do about it, really.
It's not the most pissed they'll ever make her.
No. And then we have, we now know this guy's name is Locke. I think this is where he's in, like, because he basically brings Jaime and Brienne to Roose Bolton and Aaron Hall, and Roose calls him Locke.
Yeah.
And, I don't think Roose Bolton is necessarily crazy about the fact that they cut off Jaime's hand, considering some things that he's working on the back end here. But he's like, well,
That's pretty dumb politically.
Yeah. But it's clear that this is, as you kind of like get to know the Boltons more, that this is clearly built into their culture, this brutality.
Mm-hmm. Definitely some book changes here that I can't talk about.
But who's there to fix Jaime up as best he can? Anyway, it's not a whole lot he can work with. He's had his hand cut off. But Qyburn, who is still there, and he's just kind of he's not a prisoner to Roose Bolton because he's helped by Talisa and Rob. They've left, but so he's just kind of serving as Roose Bolton's sort of maester-esque guy while he's there in Harrenhal.
Yes.
And so he's fixing up
But he's
Jaime.
not really a maester. He was kicked out.
He was a maester, but then yes, he was trained.
He had his chain fully?
I don't know. Yeah, I think so. I think they took his chain away.
Okay. Well, anyway, he was
kicked
out because of his experiments going too far for the maesters.
Yes. We have Cersei kind of has this little scene with Littlefinger where she's kind of turning to him to look more into the Tyrells, kind of try to uncover some dirt with them. So she sets him on that mission. Not much more to that. We have Olenna meeting with Tyrion, and Tyrion is like, we're gonna need. I'm seeing how expensive this wedding is gonna be and how much money we already owe. We're gonna need you to contribute a little here.
Which
and she
is a little rich from her perspective because it's the richest household asking the second richest household to contribute more.
I think this scene is really just an excuse to get them to interact. It's not really nothing important happens here, really.
Well, like the Tyrells are the ones demanding the extravagance,
right? Which he reminds her.
But on paper, the royal family should be absolutely able to provide all that, and that would be expected.
Well, now we have more stuff with Arya and the Brotherhood, and it just goes from bad to worse for her because now Gendry is like talking about how he actually wants to join them, just full stop. He just wants to be a member of the Brotherhood, and she's just like, how could you do this? She just cannot believe it. Just disgusted with everything that's happened in this episode. And then we have a big moment here. It just kind of comes out of nowhere, I gotta say. It's not like it just you associate Rickard Karstark's sort of move to kill the Lannisters as like in retaliation for Jaime killing his son, but he killed his son like almost 5 or 6 episodes ago now. Anyway, he decides to break in here and he kills Martin Lannister, who is actually Tommen, and then whoever the other kid is in there because there's 2 of them, and he just kills him. Just breaks in there and kills him.
It's brutal and it's treason.
Rob is furious, and so he's tells him, he like has him lock him up. He executes everybody else who's in on it, and he even makes the guy who says that he was just the watcher. He's like, well, kill him last and make him watch. And then
Which might be a little far, but
yeah, he is pissed. And then he has this
which is very like his father,
sure.
not liking children being
And
touched.
then Talisa's in there, Catelyn's in there, I think Brendan's there. They're all like, do not under any circumstances kill Karstark. That's
This
a
is
terrible
crucial-
idea. That's a terrible idea. And we don't actually hear, I mean, it cuts right away to him cutting his head off. But like in that scene, like for like a few seconds, before it becomes clear what he's about to do, he does not like say one way or another what he's gonna do. They like let his action speak for itself.
Yeah.
But it's pouring down rain. He goes out there. He cuts it off.
One stroke better than Theon.
Well, he has inherited ice
Yes.
from Ned, which is odd. Like I don't know, because obviously Ned goes to, he takes a sword, obviously, because he uses it against Jaime whenever he goes to King's Landing, but it does not take ice.
Interesting. Is it like sent back with his bones or something? How do we?
That could be true. Yeah, that's maybe that's the idea. But
Like
somehow
peace offering?
definitely Rob has ice at this point.
Okay.
They don't really go into a whole lot of detail about that, but that is possible now. But anyway, he cuts off his head with him, just like his dad would have, and that's that. And then we don't know the ramifications. Yeah, yes, it is. He's making pretty much everything Rob does at this point is a mistake. But if you are just watching the show, without seeing it, it's not evident that is the case unless you're like really paying attention. They give you plausible deniability, which is I think why they're.
Well, I mean, all of his advisors thought it was a terrible idea, so that's like an indication.
But you, as the viewer, are more inclined to be on the side of Rob. Like, yeah, cut this guy's head off. He just killed a child, and against your orders.
Yeah.
So, and also it's just kind of cool. Rob definitely looks like a badass while he does this.
Mm.
Anyway, we have Arya again with the Brotherhood, getting more and more frustrated here. Now she's finding out that they're going to take her to River Run to be with her family, which is good, but they're basically ransoming her to her family, and so she's like, "Wow, you guys suck ass." She's
like, "Well, we got you. We're gonna bring you to safety, but we're gonna also get some out of it."
And this is actually where they kind of give us the exposition about how Thoros has brought Beric back many times. It's not just the time that we just saw.
Yeah.
We have the reveal or the debut, I guess, of Stannis' wife and daughter here.
Celise and my sweet, sweet child. I love her so much. Shireen.
So first we see the wife, and he goes in there to confess. Because he feels some guilt about the fact that he, created the shadow baby with Melisandre, I guess, and
she's a touch less likable.
But she already knows about it, and she's like, "I'm so happy that you did that," or whatever.
Because she is bought in hook, line,
and sinker to this Lord of Light thing. And then he's always like, "I'm gonna go visit Shireen as well," and she doesn't think that he should. She's like, "You shouldn't waste your time." And she's like, she's kind of framed as being very disturbed in the scene. She's like, they reveal that she's like still got the remains of the stillborn boys that she
had like miscarriages.
Yeah, it's very odd. She's like got him,
kept him in goo.
Yeah, suspended
and is resentful of Shireen because she's a girl, so not a proper heir, and she has grayscale, so she's all.
She was not born with grayscale, but she was, which we find out later. But she's afflicted by it.
So it's just so unnecessarily harsh on Shireen, who's a perfect angel.
And so it's like a sweet in a way that he's going to visit Shireen, but then unfortunately she's like asking about Davos, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I had him locked up. You might as well just forget about it."
Yeah.
That's not great news. Then Jaime this is kind of the scene in the bath where he has this sort of heart-to-heart with Brienne, kind of a famous scene.
Yeah, a really big moment where it's something we talked about the first time he admits this in that scene to Robert.
Season 1, which honestly I think kind of takes a little bit of the steam out of this one for me.
That's what I was saying, was we mentioned that it kind of undercuts the reveal here, which is that Jaime was kind of doing the right thing by killing the man he was sworn to protect, because he was wanting to burn down the whole city with wildfire.
Well, he definitely goes into more detail on this one. Like he says that he was saying burn them all and all that stuff, and like he tries to there's other people, like he talks to Ned at one point, and he's like, "I felt like justice whenever I killed him," and he was like, "Is that what you tell yourself at night?" Obviously Ned is not buying into it.
Well, and
so this is the first person that he tells where they're actually kind of like buying into what he's saying, you know?
Sure. Well, and Brienne has judged him very harshly for this up until now. She's someone
Right.
that takes her vows
Okay.
very seriously. Kingslayer. And so it's a big moment when she kind of realizes that has a whole new perspective on what happened. Ostensibly his worst moment, his cruelest act. He was kind of being a hero, but then he didn't tell anybody. He was like, well, what's the point? Ned's gonna
Well, he's like, Ned walks in just as he's like kind of doing the deed, I think, is the idea. Or he might even, because like in the book.
No, it's right after he like does it, and then he goes and sits on the throne.
Yeah, anyway, he looks incriminated for sure. And he's just, he like kind of says in the scene, like he judged me guilty the second he walked in,
Mm-hmm. But then, even after knowing all this, Jamie passes out and she cries out, "The Kingslayer!" Like,
That's true.
I'm helping. He's like, "Jamie, my name is Jamie."
Yeah, right.
And it's very emotional, impactful, and
It's more of a significant. I mean, it's a good scene. It's a great scene. Very, very well acted. That guy that plays Jamie's phenomenal. But I think it's probably more significant in the sense of that their relationship.
absolutely. And their relationship is huge. It's one of the most interesting relationships in the series.
For sure. There's many payoffs later on. Anyway, then Shireen, we get more Shireen this episode. She visits Davos in his cell, and she decides that she's going to teach him to read.
Oh, my sweet girl. It's amazing.
Yeah, so that's very nice. And then we kind of get the scene. The point of this scene is to reveal Grey Worm as the leader of the Unsullied. So that does happen. But before that, it's like kind of Jorah and Varys sort of reminiscing about some of the old days. And it's like kind of like, oh, this is kind of nice for them. But then by the end of the scene, it's kind of revealed that they're sort of at odds. They're kind of like in competition with each other, I think.
And I am fully Team Selmy.
Right. Well, that's fair.
Not big on Jorah.
Okay. And then we immediately Rob is sort of realizing he might have screwed up because all the Karstark men have departed. And he's just like, apparently they were like a lot of men.
Yeah.
And he's just like, I can't beat Joffrey with my current strength. He's like, I'm gonna need to get these Freys back on our side. Oh, it's like, oh, geez, good luck with that, brother. So that's kind of where he's at. And then we have Sansa and Marjorie have another scene together. They're talking about how she's gonna marry Loras, and they're excited about that. And then we have some gay sex with Loras and this guy Olivar, who's a new character. And we don't know anything about him yet. Right now, he just kind of shows up out of nowhere. He's like, I think he's like out training, and then Olivar like brings him something, and then immediately cuts to that because Loras not a ton of depth with what he's looking for, and they're having some
no one
sex.
Can ever replace Renly.
Well, I'm sure. But then
What's the line in the books? It's such a good line. Whereas, like, once the sun is out, what compare or something.
Whatever. And then it's immediately, like, literally just an instant cut to report it. He's like talking to Littlefinger, and critically, he reveals to Littlefinger about the whole idea because Littlefinger to this point does not know about because the whole thing about her marrying Sansa to Loras is to get her out from under his grip.
Yes.
And he learns from Olivar that this is happening. So then immediately, so it's like a 1, 2, 3, like one right after another. He goes immediately cuts to a scene where he's talking to Sansa again, and he said, so he's like, well,
Littlefinger says,
yeah, and he's like, so, like he doesn't say that he knows about the Loras thing. He does not reveal obviously that, but he's like, are you still interested in what I propose? With coming with me. And she's like, well, of course I want to return home, but maybe it'd be better if we wait because I don't want you to put yourself at risk, for me, and I really appreciate it. And he's like,
considerate of her.
Yeah, and so like he does a great job where he's just like, absolutely, if you would prefer to stay, then you will stay. I hope you can continue to view me as a friend. I'm here for you if you need anything. And she's just like, wow, that is so nice. Like she hook, line, sinker. And that's kind of Littlefinger at his best. Like he's clearly disappointed. This is not the outcome that he wanted, but he's just like, well, I'll just work with it and just keep playing the long game here,
Yeah.
And so that's what happens. But I love how they do this because it's not revealed on screen that he's done this, but Littlefinger has clearly gone to Tywin and told them of this plot. And so then we have this meeting between Tywin, Tyrion, and Cersei, and he's like, plan now is we're gonna have Sansa marry you, Tyrion, of all people. And Tyrion's like, well, how could we do this if they're already, she's already betrothed to Loras? He's like, she isn't. It's a plot. And so if we get in before that happens, then we haven't upset the Tyrells at all on paper,
Yeah, because they haven't announced it.
Right.
And this is a much less favorable situation for Sansa.
Definitely. And also he tells Cersei that she's going to be the one to marry Loras. So at first Cersei is feeling very smug because she just loves the idea that both Sansa and Tyrion, who she hates, are going to be tortured by this. And then he reveals that actually you're going to be the one marrying that oaf. And, well, not oaf, but idiot. And he is definitely portrayed as dumb in this show.
And so no one is happy except for Tywin.
Yeah, and he's like, he kind of like looks back at him and he's like, time for you guys to start contributing.
And for
my children.
Yeah.
They're just both looking at each other like just so pissed off.
And for Cersei, she's like, I did my time in an arranged marriage.
Right.
Like,
yeah, that's true.
Please don't do this to me again. But
yeah, I mean, it's
in her society, that's kind of her role, is to marry who her father
That's
says.
what he's saying. He's like, we need, it's a worthless marriage and for what he's ultimately trying to do, which is to create more Lannisters. Because, obviously he's gay as hell and Cersei wouldn't let him touch her anyway, even if he wasn't. But
it blocks off the Tyrells from getting a different advantage.
It's like a switch up, which I think he's going to go into that. He's going to pitch this to Olenna the next episode. Yeah. He has to get her consent on it. But anyway, that's it for that one. Episode 6. Well, this is actually, I think, maybe my favorite title of all of them in the season, which is The Climb, which you think is obvious because this is the scene or the sequence where they climb the wall. But there's another thing going on here that it sort of artfully makes reference to, which I'll explain to you, unless you already know.
Well, no, I was kind of thinking about Kissed by Fire and if there's any burnings in that episode.
Yeah, there is because Beric battles the Hound and the Hound.
Oh, there you go. We often like the names having multiple
right,
meanings.
but this one is my favorite, I think.
Okay,
just on paper anyway. Off the top of my head. So it is called The Climb. This is where
no, I do know what you're talking about.
So this is where Gilly at the beginning. Gilly's teaching Sam how to build a fire. So having a little survivor moment out there in the woods.
I like how they show that even though she doesn't have the book smarts of Sam, she has her own skill set.
Yeah, that's fine. And then we get some very contrived drama between Osha and Mira, who are like competing. They're like, well, I know I can catch a rabbit better than you, or some crap like that. I don't know. It's terrible. It's horrendous. This whole storyline is just a complete disaster. Then we move on to Ygritte having they're like getting ready to, because there's a lot of Ygritte and Jon in this episode, obviously, in the Wildlings. And so at this point, they're getting ready to climb the wall. They're like kind of at the base down there, which is cool. It's like, I like this scene that they're kind of getting ready, and they're probably got some nerves going, except for Tormund. He's not concerned at all.
I don't know if y'all remember, but this wall is pretty tall.
Yeah, very large. And she basically reveals to Jon, she knows what's going on. Like, she knows that he's not really bought into this whole thing. But she's like, but it doesn't matter anymore because
you're bought into me.
You're not going to betray me. Mm-hmm. She basically like sort of commands him not to betray her.
Yeah, you don't have to be bought in my cause.
Jon is in a tough spot right now.
Yeah.
And he's got to climb this wall with these people. It's a rough situation.
Which again, there is a unbalanced power dynamic here in the relationship.
Definitely, yeah.
That it's framed very romantically, but it's a little iffy.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
But the actors have so much chemistry; it's easy to ignore.
So then we get some more Melisandre content, and she shows up at the Brotherhood camp, and so she is first of all she's learning about the fact that Thoros keeps reviving Beric Dondarrion. She is just baffled by it. She cannot believe that he has that ability.
Because he's just this drunk priest, like kind of a failure of a Lord of Light.
Right.
Dude.
But she's just like, wow, that's crazy.
She's like, he's letting you do this?
It's definitely setting this like important later on in the show for sure. Yeah. But she's just kind of, it's definitely the most fantastical thing that we've seen happen is him be revived.
Yes, we're definitely amping up the magic as we go through the series.
Anyway, then she's like, well, whatever. I'm here for Gendry, so let's go, boys. And they're like, okay, well, have at them. Because
she talks them into it.
Yeah, as far as they're concerned, like they're on the same team with the whole Lord of Light thing. And they as much as they definitely have more of a moral compass than she does, but they are bought into the same godly cause, I guess. And so they're just like, well, if you need him, then take him.
But it's an absolute betrayal because he wants to join them.
Yeah, huge betrayal because he is like really bought into them. And so once again,
Arya's next level disgusting.
Yeah, she just hates these guys. She's hating everything that's happened this season.
And I mean, so do we. Like,
yeah. I don't think any of us are anywhere near as mad as she is, though. Which it's almost enjoyable how pissed off she is, because like it is righteous anger, but it's just God, she is just over the top furious.
And she talks directly to Melisandre.
Oh yeah,
She's like, "Oh, I see you closing green eyes and blue eyes, and
yeah, all this garbage.
You know, see how that goes."
Yeah, she's might close some eyes in her day. John and company, they start to climb. So that's just kind of, I don't even think I like make note of it because it's multiple shot like sequences of them climbing the wall throughout this whole thing. But that whole thing is just, it's a big undertaking. They're climbing the wall. There's like
harrowing.
There's a contrived thing where they gotta put some drama into it, where like the line starts to break, and then the war is gonna cut them loose, and then they have to save themselves anyway. Anyway, it goes on, but it's pretty entertaining, I guess. But it's honestly not my favorite, just because you know they're gonna climb that wall successfully. Maybe not all of them are gonna make it, but the people you care about are not gonna fall off that freaking wall. That's ridiculous.
Sure.
So, and they don't.
I mean, I wouldn't put it past George, but we know they don't.
I would.
I could totally see him riding Egret. Falling off.
All right, well that's fair, but anyway, it doesn't happen. There's also some more Theon torture this episode, so it's got its highs and lows this season. But then we have Robb meeting with not Walder Frey yet, but he's meeting with some of his men.
Okay.
And so the agreement they work out here is he's going to formally apologize for his betrayal. And then Edmure instead is going to marry one of his daughters. And Edmure, like the ass he is like, well, this is bullshit. I didn't sign up for this. I'm not going to do it. And then they're like, yes, you will. And finally he does it anyway. I don't like that character very much.
Well, and I mean, it is like a decent offer. Like he's Lord of Riverrun.
Right.
But it is a step down from Queen.
Yeah, but in Robb's mind, he's like, great. Yeah, no problem with any of these terms. He just thinks he's getting off scot-free like an idiot.
Yeah. He's like, it's a great offer. It's still a big, up jump for the phrase.
Right. So then we have Roose Bolton again, and he's having a little dinner here with Brienne and Jaime, and he's being very respectful, and he's like apologizing for all the hardships they went through under his men.
They're all cleaned up, Brienne's forced into some girly clothes.
Yeah, and so she's like, or he says, I'm going to allow Jaime to continue traveling to King's Landing, and for his plausible deniability is, well, that's what Catelyn wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, but you have to tell your father that I didn't have anything to do with your injury. But he says that Brienne is gonna have to stay. So that's if this happened several episodes ago, Jaime's like, sure, whatever, give a crap about her. But now he's like a little torn about that.
They've bonded on their journey.
But anyway, so that's kind of the
she's
situation.
impossible to dislike.
Yes. That's kind of the situation that they're in. This is where next we have the meeting, like I was kind of talking about, where Tywin kind of has this meeting with Olenna, and he kind of tries to he sort of just kind of gets her to agree to his plan, to agree to marry Loras to Cersei.
She's not happy about it, but she's kind of backed into a corner.
Yeah,
but she does. I mean, give him some good sass, like she.
Oh yeah, she's still very
talks back to him, and it's satisfying to see.
It's definitely a meeting of minds, like in some ways the two most powerful characters at this point.
Yeah, and it might be the only time you see someone on Tywin's level like talk back to Tywin. Like Tyrion tries, but he always just gets humiliated. She does give him some props. She's like, it's rare for someone to live up to their reputation. No, she doesn't exactly mean it as a compliment, but
true, that's true. But he's the way that he gets her to do it is because he is a hand of the king, so he has authority. Mm-hmm. So he's like, if you do not agree to this match, then I will name Loras to the Kingsguard. And so at that point, he has to renounce his titles and all that stuff.
Yeah,
it's like kind of like the Night's Watch.
And
he's like, he even gets the pin out. He's like, shall I draw up the order?
Yeah, which wouldn't work in the books because he has older brothers. He is not
yeah, so in the book, I don't know how they are going to, assuming this is still the route they take. I guess I don't know that, but I don't know how he convinces her to do this, if he does.
Well, we definitely get more deviations the further we get.
Sure.
There's definitely political implications of Loras being the only heir.
Right. So anyway, then we have one last scene where Sansa's with Loras. It's just terrible. Like Loras is just obviously not interested at all, but he's pretending to be, and she thinks that they're just meant to be together, and he's like, oh yes, it's gonna be great or whatever. Clearly just telling her what she wants to hear. But then Tyrion has to break the news.
Oh.
And
this isn't just that he's a dwarf and a little bit older than her. This is that he's related to the
Yeah, the
man
Lannister.
that killed her father.
But it's also the dwarf thing because she does talk in the next episode. She talks to Marjorie about that. She's like, he's a dwarf.
It's part of it, but it is not.
I think maybe it's a bigger part of it than you want it to be.
Well, I just think that we shouldn't discount the fact that he is the
Sure.
uncle of the man that
Definitely,
chopped off her
that's definitely
father's
part
head.
of it. But she's
And she thought she was
in her mind, she's going from Loras, who she thinks is just the most beautiful man ever lived, to Tyrion.
And she's going from High Garden, which is this beautiful floral paradise, to being stuck in King's Landing, the shithole.
Yeah, right. That's true.
Where she has experienced all this
trauma.
trauma.
Yeah, it's a lot of negatives. But when she complains about it to Marjorie, she complains that he's.
Yes, that's part of it. It doesn't fit her image of the perfect knight that she has dreamed of.
But anyway, Tyrion also gets some big news here. There's actually a scene where before he breaks the news to Sansa, where he's talking to Cersei, and he's like he kind of makes his stand here. He decides, I'm just gonna get to the bottom of this myself, and he's like, you had that guy try to kill me. And then he kind of finds out. She doesn't come out and say it, but he figures out that actually that was Joffrey's order. And he's totally out of control in terms of Cersei has no bearing on what he does. And we've known that for a while.
Which is the part that Tywin's most disappointed
right,
in.
Definitely. And so I don't think she would have been broken up about his death, but it was not on her orders.
And that's part of the resentment against Marjorie and the Tyrells is Marjorie's doing a great job at
definitely.
So
yeah. I think that's probably the biggest reason that she hates her so much. And so Tyrion's like, well, is my life still in danger? And she's like, he won't do anything while Tywin's here. Then we get the best scene of this episode, which is the Chaos is the Ladder scene. And so this is kind of like where it's revealed that even though Littlefinger is not getting everything he wanted, he's not getting Sansa going with him to the Vale, which was his number one. That was his plan A.
Yes.
But he's still set things up in a way to where he's like totally set as he gets to leave like King's Landing. So like he just kind of lays it all like Varys like thinks that he's kind of got him right here. He's like, well, too bad about your little Sansa plan. Didn't work out, did it? And then Littlefinger is like, oh yeah, that plan, sure. And, he kind of reveals that not only does he know that Roz is the reason that didn't happen, and he's cut off that loose end by having Joffrey kill her, knowing that nothing will come of that. It's different than having having her killed,
Yeah.
It's like a darker...
Because they're not going to punish Joffrey for that.
Right,
and it's going to be brutal.
Right. So it's like, not only is she killed, she's killed in a high-profile way to, like, let Varys know, what he can have done. And, he reveals that Sansa's not getting what she wanted either, because that's ideal for him in this scenario. He wants himself to be like her best option.
Yes.
But now he's like kind of punishing her in a way by not going with her the first time. So like there's like this scene where she, like while his awesome music is playing and he's giving the speech, like she's like watching him sail away, like crying, knowing what's happened to him.
He's punishing her for not taking him up on his savior.
Right. And Varys is just like, well, what is all this? He's like, because like he's like kind of couching himself as like, I'm for the realm, and like what I'm doing is not just for myself, like for you. And Littlefinger's like, well, what is the realm? It's just a story people make up. It doesn't really mean anything. And he's like, but what do we do without it? Then it's just chaos, and chaos is a gaping pit. And he's like, chaos isn't a pit, chaos is a ladder. And it's just amazing. See, it's definitely the peak of because they've kind of been building up to this with their little scenes together in the throne room since season 1. But this is like the payoff of all of that. Yeah,
it's really good. It reveals Littlefinger's kind of philosophy and his tactics of rolling with the punches. And
yes,
the more chaos there is, the more people go down, the more he can step on their bodies and
rise higher.
Yeah.
And which he has done throughout this whole thing. And like we kind of know at this point that he's behind the whhole War of the Five Kings, really, because obviously that was not Tyrion's dagger. He had nothing to do with that assassination attempt on Bran. And we know it was his dagger. We know it was Littlefinger's dagger because he comes clean about that.
Yeah.
And
not everything has been revealed.
Yeah, not everything has been revealed. That's true. But like he just so much of what happens in this show comes back to him.
Yeah.
And this scene is a big kind of coming out of that. Even though it's if you know what to watch for, you kind of know that already. But
it might be the peak of Littlefinger.
I think it probably. I mean, I still like a lot of what he does after this.
I do too.
But yeah, this is you might be right. This might be like his coolest moment.
Yeah.
And he mentions like like when he's talking about the ladder, he's like, the climb is all there is. And so that's like the other climb thing.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Which is a nice parallel.
And then like they juxtapose that immediately with John like actually getting to the top of the wall at the end. And that's kind of the end of the episode where they're looking out over the north and everything together, having a little romantic moment.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. Let's say that episode, really good stuff. Really good stuff. That episode will be definitely up there. So episode 7 is The Bear and the Maiden Fair. And I wish I if there was one thing I should have got you to look up, it was like which ones he did. But we know that George directed this episode.
Yes, let me look up that real quick because I do want to mention
because it's 4 episodes he did, right?
Yes, he did one for each of the first 4 seasons.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the third one because I am interested to see like where they end up landing for me on my episode rankings.
Yes. Give me just one.
Well, I guess go ahead and I'll.
And he didn't direct it. He wrote.
Yeah, he wrote it. Right. Wrote it for TV. But anyway, while you're looking at that, the way it starts is it's still more John and the Wildling, and I didn't even like bother looking at this guy's name because to me he's just so unimportant. But it's that Ward guy, you know. He's like clearly there's some tension between John and him because he was ready.
Faramir, is it?
No, he was ready to like cut the rope, and he's like, you would have done the same thing if you were in my position. Or anyway, they're not getting along.
He's very unlikable.
Yes.
Okay, I've got it. So season 1, it was episode 8, The Pointy End.
Okay. And episode 2 or season 2?
Blackwater.
Okay. Well, that's a good one. That's my number 1 episode so far of the show.
And then we have.
I don't remember. I'll look in a minute if you remind me about where the Pointy End goes, and then obviously I'll tell you when we rank episodes where Maiden Fair goes. But so. We get that kind of not very important scene with John and the Ward, but then we get Catelyn. She kind of like has like a meeting, or she's sort of talking with Rob and stuff. She's like, I called her warning the baby faces here, which is the home team, if you will. It's like I don't know. And she's like Walder Frey. They seem to be pretty pissed about this. I don't know. Like it just seems unlikely for him to just roll over and let him have this downgrade of Edmure. And they're all like, whatever, don't worry about it.
Yeah, the show didn't cut out all of the times of Catelyn being right and not listened to.
Yeah, definitely not. And then instead we're just having Rob and Talisa just having a grand old time in their tent. And he's like trying to plan the war, or he's like kind of looking at his maps, and she's over there just butt ass naked doing some or she's like writing a letter.
Yeah, but being all cutesy.
Yeah. But this is actually a big reveal because this is revealed that she's pregnant.
Yeah, and they have a little fake out where he like almost seems mad, and then she's.
Oh no, they do not. And she like is a little bit. She kind of plays it off like she doesn't know how he's going to react, but he's immediately thrilled.
Well, there's like a moment where you look at his face and he's like, and it could be read either way. And then he's of course super supportive and thrilled, and we all knew he would.
But it's like I think it's a key. I mean, it's not like that important, but there's like it's definitely symbolic where he's like sitting at the desk like looking at the war stuff, and then like he's pulled away by her to talk about this.
Yes, definitely.
Anyway, that's cool. Then we have another scene with that warg, if you can believe it, and he's talking to Ygritte about how she got to be with him and not Jon Snow because he's a true wildling and all that stuff. It's not a very important scene.
Like no one on this earth wants to be there.
Then we have Sansa being upset. She's unconsolable about this downgrade that she's getting in her mind from Loras to Tyrion. And Marjorie's like, well, it's not all that bad. Has he mistreated you? He's the best Lannister by far. And
she's got some point. And she's God, I love Marjorie.
Yeah, and not to mention she's the one having to marry Joffrey, so she's got a lot worse.
And I think Marjorie genuinely does care about Sansa's well-being, and
she's kind of trying to make her see the bright side of things. And then she kind of like goes on this thing where she's like, you don't even know what you like. I've heard that he's very experienced. And then she kind of goes into this whole thing about that. And then Sansa's like, where did you learn all this from your mother? She's like, yes, sweet girl, from my mother.
Well, yeah, she's like, if being experienced can be good. And
yeah.
She's like, oh, your mom told you that? And she's like, uh-huh.
Yeah, anyway. So we move on from that, and we have Bronn and Tyrion talking. And Tyrion is kind of like a juxtaposition with that, where Tyrion's also, he's like, sucks, I can't believe him how to do this. And Bronn's like, she's an attractive young woman, I don't really know what you're broken up about.
I mean, the fact that she has no interest in him whatsoever.
Right, but for Bronn,
and is a child.
Yeah, she's 14 in the show, canonically, because they do say it during this season.
Yeah, 14.
Yeah, and so Tyrion's like, this is terrible. And Bronn's like, seems like a pretty good deal to me. I wouldn't mind with this setup that you got here.
This is the same Bronn that would be like, I wouldn't just kill a baby if you told me to. I'd ask how much.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Not exactly the paragon of virtue here.
Mhm.
Then we have Tywin has this meeting with Joffrey, so it's just the two of them, and they're kind of in the throne room, and Joffrey's like he's kind of testing his boundary with Tywin a little bit in this scene, and he does not get far.
No.
He's like, "How come you've been having these small council meetings in your chambers instead of where you're supposed to have them?"
Like where they're more accessible to me.
Yeah, and he's like, "Well, you're by all means, you're free to come to any small council meeting that you like." And he's like,
Right.
"Well,
He's
now
like, it's a waste of time
now
for me
I
to have
have
to
to,
walk."
yeah, now I have to go all the way up there." And like, there's like this power thing where Tywin walks up the steps and like towers over him while he's sitting on the throne. And he says, "We could arrange to have you carried."
Mhm. But it's basically the implication is like Tywin's time is much more valuable than Joffrey's.
Oh yeah,
Tywin,
the power dynamic is way off. Tywin is way more powerful than Joffrey at this point.
even though on paper, I mean, Joffrey's king.
Right. Well, he says later on, it might even be in season 4, but he tells Tyrion he's a fool if he thinks that Joffrey is the most powerful man in Westeros.
Mhm.
I think that is season 4. But anyway, he's just like, and then they do like this thing where he mentions, he's like, "Well, what's going on with the Targaryen across the sea?" And he's like, "Nothing to worry yourself about. She's not a threat at all." He doesn't even, I don't think Tywin even like believes that dragons exist because he's a very practical man.
Sure.
Anyway, so that's the end of that. And so, of course, the natural segue is to go to Daenerys. And in this scene, she is meeting with the leader of Yunkai, with that guy who, I don't even know if they ever name him, but you know who I'm talking about.
He's gross.
Yeah. And he offers her golden ships to sail to Westeros and just go away and leave them to their, what they'd like to do here. And she says, "Actually, you'll be releasing every slave in Yunkai or you'll be destroyed."
Yeah, she's on a mission now.
Well, yeah. So I think, so there's a lot of this idea of like, oh, what a benevolent leader Daenerys is, that she wants to release all these slaves. Now, I think that she is naturally inclined to do that because she kind of knows what it's like to be bought and sold in a way, like she was to Khal Drogo. But also, it's clear to me that, especially like with when she has the Unsullied butcher all those guys in the like, that is to her, it's not only that she enjoys the violence of it, but to her it's justice. And so she loves this idea of being like this arbiter of justice. She's like, "Oh man, it feels good to kill all these slavers and, terrible people." And so she's like, after she got a taste of it, and now she's got this army behind her, she's just like, "Oh yeah, we'll kill all of you and just have a great time doing it if you don't release these slaves." And in a way, I think she almost hopes that he refuses her, which he does. And
These are vile people doing terrible
yeah,
things.
yeah, oh, sure,
training young children to be
definitely
sex slaves and
yeah. And so, I think she kind of gets what she wants in this scene where he's just like, "Well, you come and try it. I have powerful friends." And so then she's like, lets him leave or whatever. And she like keeps the gold that he had given her as like an advance on her payment and everything. And then she like looks at George. She's like, "What are these powerful friends he's talking about?" And he's like, "I don't know." And she goes, "Go find them." So that's where we leave her on that. Then we have a scene where Tyrion is, I don't know. It's like this whole thing with him and Shay is just kind of deteriorating at this point where she's upset that he's marrying Sansa as well, even though he has no control over whatsoever. And
yeah, she's annoying.
He like brings her a chain and he's like, "Yeah, I got this for you." And she's like, "I don't care about your chains." And then she like asks him to leave with her to go to Essos. And he's like, "Well, I can't do that. That's absurd. You can't leave everything that's going on here." And so anyway, she's upset. Then we have Gendry and the Red Woman arriving at Dragonstone. They don't do anything this episode. It's just literally just a shot of them in the boat arriving.
Yeah.
So I guess they were just kind of keeping that thread going here. And then there's more Arya being pissed, if you can believe it. She's just furious at the Brotherhood. She just cannot stand these people. And finally, she's just had enough. And she's like, "You know what? Fuck this. I'm getting out of here." And so she just decides to run away. And they're just like, "Well, what are we going to do about it?" And so like I think they send some guys out to kind of try to find where she's gone. But instead, she's abducted by the Hound.
Mm.
So that's the beginning of that whole thing. And that's like kind of the cliffhanger for her this episode, because at this point I think in the show we're still not so sure about how we feel about the Hound, because he was Sansa's like he was definitely looking out for her while she was in King's Landing, but he's also he's a dark character for sure. So
yeah,
it's like, ooh, well, she's been abducted by the Hound, so we'll see.
And he ran during the battle. He has this fear of.
Well, we know that he has a fear of fire, but he's also a badass outside of that. We know that too, because he's killed a lot of people in that battle before he ran away.
But like he abandoned out of fear, just like Joffrey did. Like he's got definitely lots of mixed emotions.
Yeah,
towards
he's
him.
honestly an amazing character. Anyway, that's where we leave them for this episode, I think. And then we have Jamie bidding farewell to Brienne, and it's a bittersweet departure because he kind of knows that she's screwed.
Yeah.
And
But he's like, well, I don't have a lot.
yeah, he's like, I mean, this is my exit, so I'm out of here. And
what am I
he's-
going to put her
he's
well-being
just
above
like,
mine?
right, exactly. And he's just like, well, good luck.
Saw where that got me.
Right. And he's traveling with Qyburn of all people, who Ramsay is sending with him to King's Landing. I honestly don't even really know why. Just sending him away.
Couldn't tell you.
It's great news for Qyburn. Then we get a some might argue unnecessary sex scene with Theon and those two women that are Ramsay's girls, I guess. I don't know how else to describe them.
Yeah,
And-
it's painful to watch.
And he doesn't want to do it, and then he's just he's
They don't
he
care
is
about his consent.
he is Theon though, so he is kind of getting into it there. And then Ramsay walks in, and
It doesn't make it consensual. though.
it's not anyway, it's the last of that experience that he ever gets, because it ends with his dick getting cut off.
Yeah, and it's an introduction to a kind of important character, which is Ramsay's girlfriend.
Miranda, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, and then the other one who is much less important.
Yes.
Anyway, yeah, so that's a tough one for old Theon.
Sure.
And we get
And it's kind of weird how it's framed. Like, it's definitely framed like it's supposed to be sexy until it turns dark.
right. Anyway, yeah,
It's gross.
sure. We have John warning Ingrid. Like, he's like, he's like, I know that you guys think you got it made, but you guys are just not going to be able to defeat the Night's Watch. And I think
And she's like, us. We're not going
yeah,
to.
and I think in a way he's just trying to get her to not go along with the wildlings, because he'd rather it just be him and her and not the rest of these cutthroats. But at the same point, I think he also is legitimately concerned. Like, you guys are not going to be. It's not going to be as easy as you think
Mhm.
to go against the Night's Watch and the Wall and all that stuff. And he's legitimately concerned for her well-being.
And she's like, well, if we fail, you fail.
Right. So anyway, she's not budging. So that's too bad for him. And then, oh gosh, we got to go back to these damn reads. And it's Osha's throwing up some trouble with Jojen, which is understandable because he sucks. But she's just like sick of all this dreaming and all this stuff. And he finds she's like just hates the idea that he wants them to go north of the Wall. And she
Which,
kind of
fair.
and she kind of tells the story about how she had this husband, I guess, or just man as she calls him, and how basically he turned into a white. And she's like, I'm not going north of the Wall again.
Well, I think she had to kill him.
Yeah, she did. And we're supposed to really feel
traumatizing.
Yeah, we're supposed to really feel for her in this scene. And it's supposed to be like this dramatic backstory. But unfortunately, I do not care about any of these characters, and so it falls very flat.
Well, clearly her desire to not go north, and
It's justified,
yeah.
but I don't care. And then we have Jamie making a decision where he's like, you know what, fuck this, I am gonna go back.
Well, he asks, and like, what's gonna happen to her? And I think Kyber.
Yeah, it is Kyron. He's like, oh yeah, it's not good for her.
He like tells her
Mhm.
or tells him about.
And he's just like, fuck it, I'm going back. That's just all there is to it. I'm gonna actually do something for someone else for once. And he
It's
goes
great.
back,
He
and
jumps into a bear pit.
yeah, they're having her fight a bear, and
And with a wooden sword, I think.
Yeah,
it is.
yeah, definitely.
So she stands on.
so she's definitely screwed, but he gets her out of there.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's
And
the
it's
big-
great. And then
big
he has
comment.
kind of a little power struggle with the dude that threw her in there.
Yeah, there's nothing really he can do about it because Jamie is much more of an MVP.
Yeah, because the dude's mad because he found out that there's not actually a big
Right.
sapphire.
Yeah, there's basically nothing he can do about it. So Jamie just he did the right thing. He helped her out, and there was nothing bad happened to him.
But he did put himself in the
He put himself at risk, for
line
sure.
fire
Yeah,
bear.
definitely. But it worked out for him in this case. So that's kind of interesting for him. And that's it for that episode. So going on to episode 8, this one's called The Second Sons, our favorite people, these Second Sons. But first we have Arya with the Hound, and she's got a rock, and she's like, I think I'm just going to kill this guy right now. So she's like kind of sneaking up on him because it looks like he's sleeping, and she's like, I'm just going to cross his name off my list. But he's like, go ahead and try it.
Get one
But,
shot.
Yeah, I'll give you one shot. And she's like, all right, fine. Thinks better of it.
Doesn't like her.
And so then he kind of reveals that his plan is to take her to her family at the Twins. And so she's like, well, that's not so bad. I guess I can go along with him for now.
Yeah, I mean, it's like no worse than what the Brotherhood was going to do.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of her situation. And then we have Daenerys meeting the namesake of this episode, the Second Son, which is
Mercenary company.
a mercenary company. Basically, she's just meeting the three leaders two of which it turns out are not important at all, and Dario Naharis, who
Yes.
is actually important. And so she's like trying to, so she's like the powerful friends. It's revealed that that guy was talking about. That's going to defend Yunkai if she attacks it. And she's like, well, you guys should come work for me because you're mercenaries and I can pay you just as well as those guys can. And we're the winning side. So you should just join us.
Yeah.
And they're like, all right, well, we'll consider it. And then,
Two of them are like, no, we're not doing that.
well, later on, it's revealed that they have no intention of doing it. But they're kind of, they don't tell her that straight to her face. But yeah, it seems like a tough one on her part to convince them to do that. And then we have Gendry meeting Stannis and Davos. And
which it's kind of a big moment. This is his nephew.
Right. And actually in this scene, this is before obviously Gendry has no idea what's going on. But then Davos is like, don't have him killed. He has your blood in his veins. Your Baratheon blood in his veins anyway.
Which this is where Gendry learns that, isn't it? In the show, or does he already know?
No, I think he knows.
How did he find out in the show?
Well, he knows that those guys are coming for him. Like the Lannisters are coming for him.
Yeah, but I don't think he knows why.
I don't remember the exact details yet either, but I think that he knows at this point.
Okay. In my memory, this is where it's revealed.
That's possible. That's also possible. Anyway, it's not really super important, but Stannis obviously knows. And so Davos obviously knows. And he's like, don't have him killed. Come on, man. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, he is not here to reunite with his uncle.
Right. Okay, so that's where that is right now. The Second Sons kind of have the thing where they're considering Daenerys' offer, and it's clear that only Dario Naharis is interested in this fighting for her side, but he's outvoted, so it's like, well, guess that's that. That's where we leave it in this scene.
Do they don't draw rocks yet for who's gonna kill her?
Oh yeah, maybe they do. And he gets the rock.
Yeah.
Anyway, they're not too concerned about her, it turns out. Then we have our first, we're kind of going on it's wedding season here in Game of Thrones. And so our first wedding is Sansa marrying Tyrion, which really is like it's really not a whole lot. It's like really a boring wedding, really. But I remember the first time watching this, it's a rare example of how knowing something about a show beforehand kind of can enhance some things. Where, to me, this was an extremely tense scene. The first time I watched it, because I was like, is this the Red Wedding? Because I know the Red Wedding's a thing. And there's like at least 3 weddings that I know of that are lining up here, because we have this one, we have the one at the phrase, and we have also Joffrey's wedding,
Yes.
And this is in my mind, because like I'm not really thinking about Rob and Catelyn because they're not getting married. I'm thinking about the people that are getting married. And it's like, well, of all the weddings that we have lined up, Sansa and Tyrion are by far the ones that I care about the most as characters. Like these are, I don't care that much about Joffrey and Marjorie at this point. I mean, I know that you're supposed to, but like to me, they're nothing to Tyrion, who is like kind of at a high at this point after all the season 2 stuff. And then,
coloration is
and
very
Sansa,
red.
you care about her because she's a Stark, even if you're annoyed by her.
She's a redhead. She's marrying into the red of the Lannisters.
And then
lots of red coloration in the scene.
And then like the Joffrey one, it's like, anyway, it's like, I didn't think that would be the right wedding, because I mean, I guess I thought it could be possible, but it's just like, what could happen to, he's the king, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, like if something bad happened to him, then that's fine.
Yeah.
And then and then of course the Edmure one, I was like, I didn't care about that one at all.
Yeah.
Which, is the actual one. But anyway, this was a very tense scene to me. And nothing happens. It's fine.
Well,
goes off without a hitch.
Joffrey's a dick.
Yeah, of course. But as far for King's Landing standards, goes off without a hitch.
Sure.
And then we have Gendry's leeching. So that's disturbing.
Some
Red Woman. Your favorite.
Some sexual assault from the Red Woman.
Yes, we do. But it kind of makes sense, because she wants the blood to rush to that specific body part so she can get a nice pinch of blood. Yeah, it is. But anyway, she has that scene with them, and then they burn the 3 leeches, and it's basically all of the other kings that are still alive. So it's Robb, it's Joffrey, and it's Balon.
Yeah. They tried to use his
blood.
blood.
Do some black magic, with his blood.
Yes. Which I think was, Davos said, like,
oh yeah, they would have killed
him.
They absolutely would have killed him, but they settle for this because of Davos.
Because y'all don't know that it's going to work. And so she was like, okay, let me prove to you that there's power in his blood.
Right. So that's where they're at. Then we have the wedding feast, and after Tyrion's wedding, and Tyrion is just plastered. He is just falling over drunk. It's just making a complete ass of himself. Tywin is disgusted. Sansa's disgusted. He's just being a complete fool. And then it kind of culminates in, he doesn't have as many inhibitions as he might if he was
Yes.
sober. And so he like threatens Joffrey. Like he's like got a knife and he's like even like stabs the table, I think.
I believe he threatens to gild him.
Yeah, something like that. Because Joffrey's trying to force him to have the betting ceremony or whatever to humiliate him and Sansa, particularly Sansa. And so that there's like this tense scene where he like just threatened the king in front of like everybody. Everybody's at this, this dinner. But whatever, they kind of send him away, and
Well, he like acts like he's just really drunk, and Tywin's like, I'm sure he didn't mean to
right.
threaten the king, and
Sure.
Tyrion pretends to be even more drunk than he actually is.
Is that right?
Trying to get away with it.
To me, he's like just actually that drunk.
So I think he plays it up for sure in order to survive the encounter.
See, I didn't feel that way. The way I read the scene is he's getting himself absolutely plastered so that he cannot even think about what he has to do with Sansa.
He is getting very drunk, but I think he acts even more drunk than he is in order to
Okay. Well, we have a different read on it.
survive.
I disagree with you.
Okay.
Because I think he's just trying to cope with the fact that, he's definitely expected to have sex with Sansa tonight.
He
does not want
absolutely
to do that.
is, but I don't think he's quite to the point yet because he's going to do more drinking later. He's not quite to the point yet where he's like blackout drunk.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that. But anyway, he does decide not to have sex with Sansa, and he sleeps on the
Which his
couch.
father has ordered him to do.
Yeah,
He's ordered
absolutely.
consummate
That's why he's
marriage.
like getting drunk about it, because if it wasn't for that order, then it wouldn't even matter. He wouldn't even feel the pressure to do that.
And he's like gonna do it.
Yeah. He's worked himself up to it. That's what the drinking is, I think. And then he's just like still can't go through it.
Which
So-
is a relief to Sansa.
Yes, definitely. So that's that. And then we have Daenerys taking a bath, and Darian Harris just walks in, he owns a place. And it's like, wow, you're a bold man, say what? And like he just like drops the heads of those other guys. It's like,
I believe he first puts a knife to Missandei's throat.
yeah,
He
he
says
might.
like, don't scream or whatever.
Yeah.
Which, how dare he? Not a great first impression for me.
Anyway, he drops the heads and he's like, the second sons will work for you. And she's
Yeah.
like, great.
Because they were not wanting to, but he killed them instead of
Yeah.
her. And says that it's just because she's so beautiful and he follows the beauty.
Which honestly,
seems to be the case.
yeah, I'm not sure that he's lying in that case, actually.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's that. Then we have the kind of the morning after scene with where Shay comes in, and because she is the handmaiden, and she finds that in fact Tyrion did keep his word. He did not have sex with Sansa.
She looks at the bed sheets and she's relieved. Both on the part of Sansa being spared and he was loyal.
I feel like mostly it's him being loyal in that moment.
No, I truly think because that's like her one thing right now is she like really is protective of
Not her one
Sansa.
thing, because he also is furious at Tyrion.
Yeah, it's her two things. Is she's
Right. So anyway, she's pleased by that.
Too
And then
bold.
the dramatic conclusion here for this episode is the White Walker comes for Gilly's baby. And Sam kills him with the whatever it is, dragon glass.
He kills
obsidian.
the White Walker. So John has killed whites.
But no one's killed a White Walker that we've seen up to this point.
So huge badass moment for Sam. And he does it
Sure.
defending Gilly and her baby, and I swoon.
There you go. What a great man. Okay, episode 9. There, as we know, they always go hard in episode 9. It's the Reigns of Castamere.
And I'm sorry, just to go back, like Sam
Undercutting episode 9 with this Sam nonsense.
he is established as a coward, but then when it counts, he
He bucked up. Now,
yeah.
granted, he stabs him in the back, but
Okay, but he fights.
Yeah,
He
I get
doesn't run, he fights. And the White Walker is not here for Sam.
No.
Sam didn't have to stay, but he stays to defend that baby.
sure, absolutely. He did.
And
And it worked out.
what a brave man.
Sure. So the Rings
Makes
Casimir,
sense.
episode 9, we start with Rob, who turns out to be a pretty important character in this episode. But it's an interesting scene where Tim and Catelyn, and he actually is asking her. He's like, this is the first time in quite some time where he's asking her for advice. He's like, are we doing the right thing here? And particularly, he's not really asking about the thing with the freight, whether that's the right thing, but he's like asking because like his plan now is to use the Frey forces to go to Casterly Rock and take Castle Rock because Tywin's not there. That's like kind of the move that they wouldn't expect. And she's like, kind of weighs the risk, and she's like, "Nah, yeah, this is the right thing. Let's teach them what it's like to lose something that they love." And so she, he gets her blessing on this.
Yeah. But I think, is this also where she says, like, if we don't succeed, like, we're done?
No, that's episode 1 or season 1.
Okay.
So she actually does kind of give him the stamp of approval here, which I think is important for him. And then we go from that to him actually meeting Walder Frey, I think, for the first time, because before it was just Catelyn that did it for him.
Mm-hmm.
And
but
so
just to go back, I think it's also important that he was actually asking and listening to an
definitely.
advisor, because he has not been doing that recently.
Yes. But unfortunately, she gives him the wrong advice in this case. And they meet with Walder Frey, and like I said, this is the first time for him. And Walder Frey like insults Talisa, and Rob's just furious, but he holds himself back.
Well, to be fair, it is an insult that he brought her.
Oh,
there
definitely.
Yeah, like, that was a big mistake.
Huge mistake.
Not that it was going to change anything, but just
slap in the face, definitely.
Just dumb.
But he like insults her, but he's like also like, well, who can blame you? I would have done the same thing or something like that.
Which is 100% believable.
Sure.
Anyway, I don't know this about old Walder Frey, but he's had a lot of wives.
Yes, and a lot of children. So that's where we are with that right now. Daria Naharis is kind of devising a plan to sneak into Yunkai. So we're that's kind of the underlying thing that they're working on this episode.
Yep.
Sam kind of continues to bond with Gilly, and they're kind of having this conversation about how, because they're going to the wall and they're going to actually go in somewhere that's not Castle Black.
Yes.
To begin with, which I'm not really sure why they do that, because they do end up going to Castle Black anyway. But
I think it's closer. Or
maybe that's right. Yeah, that might be right. But anyway, he's like, yeah, I can go in this like secret entrance, and there's like all these, and he's like just spouting off all this knowledge about how they're going to get in there. And she's like, how do you know all this stuff? And he's like, well, I read about it. And she's like, you know all that from looking at books. And he's like, yes.
Words on paper.
Yeah. And so anyway, that's kind of like a foreign concept to her.
Well, yeah, because she wasn't raised with an education at all. Like, she was raised to be a housewife, be a slave to Craster. And so she's like learning the value of education and reading, and it's very cool to see. But she also has her skill set that they don't minimize. They have moments of her knowledge being useful.
Yeah.
But she's also just amazed by Sam and his learning, and so it's really cute.
Yes. We have Arya and the Hound knocking out a man on the road. That's just all there really is to the scene. Like, Arya's like, don't do it. And then he knocks him out. And then she's like, why did you do that? This is just like some, right, what's he going to do to you? And he's like, I don't know.
Man.
Yeah. Or he basically convinces her it's the right thing to do. Then he starts to get up, and she knocks him out herself.
Yeah.
And they get out of there. Anyway.
Which is kind of a parallel to
definitely.
Brienne and Jaime not doing that.
100%. So then we have more Bran stuff, if you can believe it. But this is definitely his best scene in this, or like this kind of sequence is the best of him this season, where it's like they are arriving at this watchtower, and it turns out to be close to where Jon and the Wildlings are arriving, and they're at this guy's home that is a horse breeder for the watch, and they're like, God damn, this guy's got some horses, we could use those. Mm-hmm. And so they're like, Don's like, there's nothing he can really do for him at this point. He's just like, these wildlings have decided that they're going to attack this guy.
He tries to speak for him.
The best he can do is they're running in, and he clangs his sword on a stone so that he or on a boulder so that he knows that they're coming
and has like a head start.
Yeah, and so he does right away.
Mm-hmm.
And then so it looks like he escapes. So then we have Arya and the Hound. They're arriving at the outskirts of the Twins, and like this is a big moment for Arya. She's like, this is the closest she's been back to her family in some time.
And for me, I mean, the whole first time I was watching the show, I was just
you're right there with
desperately for the Starks to reunite. Like that was my number one thing, is like get this family back together. And so we're so close.
Yes,
it's a big moment.
But before we have that, this is where like the Wildlings, they kind of come to that tower that Bran's in, and Hodor's like flipping out because there's like a thunderstorm brewing, and basically Jojen's like, you have to work into him, with no emotion whatsoever. And then
because he's gonna give him away.
I know that. And then Bran does. He kind of knocks him out. And then,
which is a huge deal and kind of a big no. Like, you don't board people, and you're not really supposed to be able to. Like, it's very tricky. So this is a huge feat on his part that he's able to warg.
Yeah, we care so much about it because we really are invested in these characters. But anyway, then the wildlings, so they kind of hear something, particularly the warg, but then they're just like, oh, whatever, didn't care about that.
There will be no Hodor slander in
There
this
will
household.
be. And then the wildlings turned out they did catch the horse breeder, and they're like, all right, John, time to prove yourself. Kill this guy.
And this is where
John's just like, no, I'm not going to do it.
He
And then
could
he
kill
just
the man that asked him to, but he couldn't kill.
Yeah, absolutely. And so he just is cutting through these wildlings like butter. And Ygritte is actually, it looks like she's going to back him up. She actually is going to back up John. But then Tormund like takes her down. Like he's not hurting her or anything, but he's just like basically restraining her. He's like, he is not with us. Do not get yourself killed on his behalf.
Yeah, they're protecting her.
Mm-hmm. And so John is just like cutting people down left, right. There is one that almost kind of gets a drop on him, and then it's like we're cutting back to the tower where like Bran is like warged into Summer, and like this Summer comes in and takes out a wildling. It's very awesome. And then
So this is, I mean, that's almost a Stark reunion right there.
yeah, exactly. This is like as close as it gets. That's why this is I think Bran's best scene this season. And then so he kills those guys. He kills the warg. He does get some scars for his trouble from that eagle.
Yeah.
And then he gets a horse and rides the fuck out of there. And Ygritte just cannot believe it. She's just heartbroken at this.
Yeah. So she shoots some arrows after.
That's
that,
later
right?
on.
Okay. Well, it's very sad because John doesn't know that Bran was there.
Right. But Bran knows. He's like, that was John down there.
But they're also kind of like, well, we want to go beyond the wall, and John would never allow that.
Right. That's what, of course. Jojen, the killjoy is always.
Yeah.
So then we go back to the young guy stuff, which I really don't think is that interesting this episode. But this is, I guess, the best part of it, where it's like Dario, Jorah, and Grey Worm that kind of go in there, and it's like Dario's plan. They go in there, and then it turns out it doesn't go exactly as they planned. There's more resistance than they think, so it's just like the three of them against a bunch of guys, and kind of leave it ambiguous how it turns out. But like they take out some, and then it cuts away.
Yeah.
But anyway, whatever.
Some action. Scene.
Then Edmure finds out that the Frey wife is actually hot at the wedding.
Which Walder has not been forthcoming with.
No.
He's like, you can take your pick of like 12 of them, but he doesn't show the...
Well, this one he's picked already. He didn't even give Edmure the pick.
No, but before he was
because
going through like, look, all
Rob would have had the pick. But the thing is, Rob didn't see them.
Yes.
It's just Catelyn, and he's like, well, how were they? And Catelyn's like, there was one who was no.
Yeah.
She like can't really.
Because he like hides the
right, the hot one.
The hot one, yeah.
And so anyway, he's Edmure's thrilled about this because he's the shallow as they come, and it seems like things are going great this wedding.
To be fair to Edmure, if you're in an arranged marriage and you know nothing about her,
yeah.
If the one thing you learned about her so far is positive,
sure.
All right.
Anyway, so it looks like the wedding's going off without edge. And then we get some more. If you can believe that they cut away from this to go back to Bran, it's crazy that they make this decision. But in fact, they do, and it's more Bran. And this is where they decide that Osha should take her gun and not go north of the wall with this 5-year-old or whatever he is.
Good call.
Yeah, good call. So she's like, "All right, say your goodbyes," and she wasn't going anyway. So.
And it's very sad. It's the exact opposite of what we wanted. We have a stark separation.
I do not feel an ounce of emotion from this scene. Not one.
You're not sad that those little brothers are separated?
Not at all.
Well, it sounds like they didn't develop Rickon very well.
I would agree with you. Anyway, then it turns out that Dario and those guys succeeded, and Yunkai is now belongs to Daenerys, so great for her. Ooh. And then, if you can believe it, the conclusion of this episode is the Red Wedding.
Oh,
it's a complete disaster. Rob and Catelyn and all the Starks are killed, and it's just a disaster.
Rob's wife, her pregnant belly,
and Arya they're on the way in. Like they actually are at the gates, and the Frey guys actually do them a favor. They're like, "Peace over."
Yeah, and she witnesses.
Yeah, she witnesses the death of Grey Worm, which is to me the most brutal thing in this scene. Because she's so close to letting him out, and it's like, but what would he have really been able? I mean, he would have taken some guys down, but he definitely was screwed either way.
Well, if she could get him to leave, but I mean, he wasn't gonna.
He wasn't gonna leave.
But still, he's just killed, just like trapped in a.
Yeah, can't even fight back.
It's just brutal.
Yeah, it sucks.
I don't know if y'all know this, but the Red Wedding's brutal.
Yeah, one of the most famous scenes in television history. I think it's because, with Ned, that was shocking in episode 1 that he would kill that main character in that one. But for this one, even though I don't know that any of these characters are quite as important to the overall story as Ned is. Like,
Well, they could have been
it's
if Rob had taken over.
Yeah. It's several of them are killed at once, and it's more out and it's like they're up in the ante from just having Ned killed to Rob and Catelyn and to Lisa. Do you care about her? Probably a distant third, but in the three, but she's still an important character or positioned as such for these seasons.
And pregnant with the
heir, and she like tells him at the wedding that she's gonna name him Ned, and he's just having a great happy moment.
Yeah.
He actually has like this shit-eating grin on his face whenever Walter like is just about to like lay it down on his ass.
Yeah.
And he even like the Reigns of Casimir are playing and he's just having a grand old time, not even thinking about it. The only one that notices is Catelyn.
Mm-hmm.
And that she kind of does the thing where Bruce Bolton reveals with his and he specifically holds it out to goad her. Like just to like let her know, like, yeah, we're betraying your ass right now. And I'm enjoying it. It's like he's got a grin on his face too.
Yeah. And Catelyn thinks she can maybe save Rob. She takes Walder's wife and holds a dagger to her throat and is like, please just let him go.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'll find another wife.
Yeah, he does. It could not care less. It's like not even close to bargaining chip.
And she does follow through.
Yeah,
she does kill the wife.
Yeah.
The innocent wife.
Yep.
But
too bad for her.
She lets out this cry where she's just already on her face. She is dead before her throat is slit. It's really well done. Absolutely heartbreaking.
Yeah. And I think what makes this particularly brutal for people is when Ned was killed, he was already in a position of weakness.
He was a prisoner of war.
He was a prisoner already for 2 episodes.
Right.
Plus, he was kind of a shell of his former self. He'd been stabbed in the knee. He couldn't walk. He was walking with a cane.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, this is Rob. Now, for us, he's clearly been weakened if you've been paying attention. But from the layman's perspective, people have
lost a battle.
He has not lost a battle. He is clearly positioned as the best hope for the good guys winning. And he just gets completely butchered.
And there's the injustice of breaking guest right. They've eaten the bread and salt. That's a huge taboo. Someone's eaten on your roof.
That's for the world, yes. But I think for people watching the show, the reason this scene is so famous is because it comes out of nowhere and on paper. And also, these are Rob in particular is your best hope for success of the good guys winning.
Like for Westeros, like you're like, who am I supposed to?
Right. Who are you supposed to pull for now? Like John is.
And my answer is my Queen Marjorie. But I
don't think a lot of people will probably arriving at that conclusion. I don't think it's quite the same trade for a lot of people.
Yeah.
For your Brett Foxes of the world, if you will.
Sure.
So anyway, that's the Red Wedding, and that is obviously the dramatic conclusion for episode 9. Once again, going hard on the penultimate episode of the season instead of the finale. And
now
so
we've got the wind down.
The wind down, and boys, the wind down is called Misa.
Misa.
So it starts with the Red Wedding still going on, and it's like just from the Arya and the Hound's perspective. And so like Arya's just like horrified at what's happening. She's just kind of hiding. She doesn't really know what she can do. She's gonna like she comes out of the shadows, and then the Hound is just like, it's too late. And he knocks her out, and then just takes her.
Yeah, and it's to protect her, so she doesn't get herself killed.
Right.
But it is brutal. We're so close.
And then like there's like this great shot where like Ramsay or Roose like climbs this tower to like overlook everything, and he like looks over, and it's just a sea of fire. Like all the tents are being burned and everything. Yeah. It's a cool shot.
Because it's not just the nobles; it's
all their whole army that's there. Is that they're all butchered.
Yes.
So that's pretty dramatic scene, and then we cut to of all people to cut from the Red Wedding. It is Tyrion and Sansa, and they're having a little walk, and they're both obviously very upset at what's been going on. Although in the grand scheme of things, they're doing great compared to what's going on there.
She's going to be more upset.
And this is actually the closest they come during this series to like having a little bit of a bond, where they're kind of bonding over the idea of getting revenge on people. Because like somebody walks by and like has a little snide remark about Tyrion. He's like, well, add him to the list. And Sansa's like, you have a list of people that you're gonna kill? And he's like, not kill. It's ridiculous, because it's like a thing on Arya. But they're like, he's like, but perhaps to get revenge on in some way. And then she's like, what should we have done to this man? And she like comes up with this like prank that Arya used to play on her, where she would like put shit in her under her mattress or something. I don't know.
Dung.
Yeah, or whatever. And he's like, an interesting idea. And they're just having a fun little time here.
He might have been thinking of something a little harsher,
But then unfortunately he goes to the small council and he gets the news that basically her entire family has just been killed.
yeah. And he's like, how the fuck do you want me to consummate this marriage now?
And so Tywin is having a great time. And Joffrey in particular, he's just loving this. He's like, can you
Oh,
believe
he
how
did not.
wonderful this is? But then he kind of like goes too far where he's I can't even remember exactly what he does, but he does something to like piss off Tywin, or he like oversteps his
Sansa.
Rob's
yeah,
and
head
Tywin's like
at his wedding feast.
Tywin's like, you'll do no such thing, and then he's like, I'll do what I want. I'm the king, and then Tywin basically just sends him to bed.
Yeah, he's like,
and this is the part where Tyrion says, "You just sent the most powerful man in Westeros to bed without supper," and he says, "You're a fool if you think that he's the most powerful man in Westeros."
yes.
And then
It's
he's
good stuff. It's very satisfying to see him put in his place.
right, and then he reminds Tyrion, he's like, "You still got some work to do, I think." And he's like, "You just murdered her family."
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And he's basically like, now rape the little girl.
Right. And so then it is Tyrion. He's like, he goes to the room and he like checks on her and she's crying at the window. And he's like, oh, man. There's like, he doesn't even say anything in that scene. He's like, what can he say?
Yeah. He's mercifully does not
Mm-hmm.
do what his father wants.
Yeah. So that's that. Then we have Bran and company. They stopped to sleep they have actually arrived at the wall. And it turns out where they arrive is where Sam and Gilly are, but then we don't know that yet in this scene. Instead, we just have them talking about some gibberish. But we do have like it's actually a little bit of foreshadowing about the ultimate fate of Walder Frey, which I think is interesting that they have already kind of planned that out at this point. But it's like Jojen is like telling a story of this guy whose his son or somebody is cooked into a pie, and he enjoys him so much that he asks for a second slice or whatever.
Yes. And it's not because there's something, it's a moral about guest right. It was like he did something horrendous, but that's not what he's being punished for. He's being punished for breaking guest right.
Yeah.
And it shows just how seriously the kingdom takes that.
Right. But unbeknownst to you, it's like also foreshadowing. Like if they already have that all planned out, that's very impressive because that's many seasons away.
I can't say anything.
Sure. So then it cuts from that to Roose Bolton and Walder Frey celebrating their victory. They're having a grand old time. And it's like, normally when you see Walder Frey celebrating, like nobody's really there with him. But in this, or, because he's just such a deplorable character, nobody really likes him. But Roose is like actually like, yeah, nice work. Like they're getting along, having a grand old time. And he's like, well, what are you going to do? Are you going to go live in Winterfell? And he's like, eventually, perhaps, and they're talking about how they've both gone up in the world as a result of this, while people are literally mopping the blood out of the floor.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
pretty bad dudes.
And like Roose kind of mentions his bastard. This is actually the reveal in the show that it's Ramsay Bolton, although he's technically a Snow, that has been torturing Theon this whole time. Because before that, you have no idea who he is.
Mm-hmm.
And so then it cuts from that to Ramsay, and he's enjoying a nice sausage in front of Theon, which you kind of get the
play for
what they're going for there, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because to Theon it is a joke, or not to Theon too. It's not a joke to him at all, but to
Ramsay,
yeah, because he's a very sadistic man. But it's also kind of juxtaposing this sadism of the two of them, because like Ramsay like revels in it outwardly, whereas I think Roose revels in it as well, but it's just more of an inward revelry, Yeah. Like the closest he comes to reveling in it is this scene with Walder Frey, but he's still like very subdued about it,
Like Roose is just as sick, but he's more subdued about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So then we have the scene where Sam and Gilly run into Bran and them, and they're like, "You really ought to, I don't know if you ought to go north of the wall. There's some bad stuff up there." And they're like, "Well, this is what we have to do because we're very boring characters that talk like this." And they're like, "All right, well, whatever." And then we have
Jojen.
Yeah.
Mira does not talk like that. I will not.
Bran and Jojen both talk like that.
And doesn't yet, does he?
He's getting there. But yeah, it's not as bad at this point. So then Yara and Balon literally receive Theon's dick in a box. And Balon is like, whatever, I don't really care that much about this. But Yara is just like,
well, he's basically like, oh, he's not my son anymore.
Yeah. He's just like, are you kidding me? This is ridiculous. And so she actually kind of has this cool scene where she gets on a boat and gets some guys and they're going to go save him. Mm-hmm. That's the end of, her storyline for this season.
Because, you know, she has a lot of respect among her people. She's
Mhm.
commanded a lot of loyalty.
And even though she like doesn't, you know, she's never really shown a lot of respect for Theon and clearly looks down on him, she you know, realizes that he's still her brother and cares about him to some degree.
Yeah, it's an awesome moment for her.
Mm-hmm. And so then we have Sam and Gilly seeing Bran and company off, and he gives Mira some dragon glass, and that's that. Then we have Davos and Gendry. They're kind of having a little bonding moment in themselves because Gendry, he doesn't realize that Davos saved his ass, and so he's just like, "You're just like the rest of them, you highborn piece of garbage." Because he's like having a kind of an Arya arc here where he's pissed off at everything.
When really they're both from Flea Bottom.
Yeah, and so that's what Davos explains to him. He's like, "Actually, I grew up in Flea Bottom just like you." And he's like, "I don't believe it." And then he says some stuff that's like, "There's no way he would know that without having grown up there." And so they kind of bond a little bit over that. And then we have Varys, who has a scene where he approaches Shay, and he like, I don't remember if it's like a bunch of coin or if it's like something that she could sell for a lot of, it's some sort of jewelry that she could sell for a lot of money. She's like, "Why don't you just sell to Essos and, you know, be free of all this?"
And she thinks that, which I think is correct, that Tyrion.
I don't think it is actually. In the book, maybe it is, but in the show, I don't think.
Maybe I'm wrong.
I think it actually is just Varys in the show.
Okay.
But yeah, she definitely comes to that conclusion. She's not having it.
It's either Varys thinking that it's best for Tyrion.
I think that's what he thinks. Yeah.
But it could also be Tyrion totally not wanting to do it.
100% right.
Sure.
Cersei and Tyrion have this is they have a lot of scenes together throughout the first 3 seasons of the show, and I think this is the one probably where they get along the most, where she's kind of talking about her love for her children. He's like, "Even Joffrey," and she's like, "Even Joffrey," and she's like talking about how he was like a really good baby or whatever.
Her firstborn.
And then it's just kind of like a farewell to these characters scene is basically what it is for the season, because Tyrion's like kind of just thinking about how brutal what Tywin did is, and he's just like, "How long is this going to go on?" And she's like, "Well, until we don't have any more enemies." And he's like, "Well, every time we get rid of an enemy, 2 more take their place." And she's like, "Then I think it'll go on for quite some time." Kind of talking about the show as a whole, really, in that scene. And then we have Sansa and the Hound, or Arya and the Hound, rather. And they come across some of I think they're Fremen that were basically participating in the rebellion. They killed some guys, and they're just like the Hound is like, "Well, there's some of those guys anyway." He's just gonna keep riding, but then like turns around, Arya's like making a beeline for him, and he's like, "Oh well, here we go." So they kill those guys at their campfire. It's like pretty awesome. This is definitely where Arya, she's starting to get a taste for violence at this point for sure. Kind of similar to Daenerys in some ways. Like they definitely, I think, both get some joy out of it for people that they think deserve it. Then we have the scene that you were talking about where Ygritte comes upon Jon, and she's just cannot believe that he left her, and he's like, "What would you have me do, Ygritte?" And then she shoots his ass like 3 times.
But she could have killed him
and didn't.
She hears him, lets him go ultimately.
Yeah.
But that's like 3 arrows.
Oh yeah, 3 arrows, definitely. He's feeling that one for sure. Then Sam and Gilly arrive at Castle Black, and he goes to Maester Aemon, luckily, and he's like got Gilly there, and she's like kind of, like totally at his mercy at this point.
Yeah, because women are not supposed to be allowed there.
Yeah. And Maester Aemon's like, "Now, Samwell, do you remember the vows that you swore?" And he's like, "He's not mine, Maester Aemon. I remember every one of my vows." And he like starts doing his vows, and he kind of turns it around on, "We're supposed to guard the realms of men, and that includes the wildlings and everything." And he's like, "Very well, she'll stay here in the kitchens or whatever." Or I don't even think he says that, but she's like, "I can clean and I can work in the kitchens or whatever." And he's like, "Great." And then he basically because the rest of the Night's Watch has not come back, and obviously Sam knows, I guess, that the Lord Commander's been killed, so he's like he was
there for the meeting.
He's got that news as well. So Aemon's like, "Well, feed the ravens; they'll all fly tonight," and he's got to get the news out and everything.
Yeah.
So very cool scene. Maester Aemon's awesome.
I mean, everything with Maester Aemon is great.
So then immediately actually cuts from that to Davos receiving the message, and he's kind of been learning how to read this whole season, so he's like kind of reading
Shireen.
and Shireen's with him up there, while they're getting the mail, And
Well, he still needs help.
she's like reading a book and yeah, helping him if he needs help. He's like going over the mail. And then like he realizes like, oh, this is a significant letter. And then it like cuts from that to
We kind of skimmed over how he was freed. He was in a cell last time we talked about him.
oh, is that right? Yeah, Stannis comes down there and frees him.
Mhm.
But he goes straight to him to Melisandre, and he is also just now getting the news that he's kind of getting a lot of news here because he's getting the news about the Night's Watch, but he's also getting the news about the Red Wedding.
Dark wings, dark words.
Yeah, and so like she's like totally taking credit for it. She's like, "Look how we've been rewarded. I told you that it was all correct." And Stannis is like,
that leech?
Stannis is like, "You're right. We got to kill Gendry because he's just completely proven that there's power in his blood." And so Stannis immediately just goes down there and gets him on a boat.
Davos.
Yeah, Davos. Yeah, he just sends him away immediately. Doesn't even hesitate.
Row and tell you.
Yeah, and he's like, "Can you swim?" And he's like, "No." And he says, "Don't fall in."
Yeah.
And that's it. We don't see Gendry for a long time. Many seasons from now. Anyway, we go from that to Jon Snow arriving at Castle Black, and he's just a mess. But he survives.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of a series of returns because him returning to Castle Black, and that's kind of juxtaposed with Jaime returning to the Red Keep.
We at least get a Night's Watch reunion.
Sure.
And
a Lannister reunion.
A twin reunion. We've
all
been
like
waiting
he
for.
just like walks in, and he's just kind of can't believe it, and he like walks in the door and he sees Cersei, and Cersei's like, I don't know, looking out the window, looking badass or something, and then he says, "Cersei," and she turns around and she's like shocked.
Well, especially shocked because he only has one hand.
Mm-hmm, yeah, and that's it. They leave it there. Like we don't see any interaction between them other than that for this season.
Yeah,
but it's a great moment.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's where Davos like goes up to Stannis and he's like, "Yeah, free Gendry. What are you gonna do about it?" And Stannis is like, "Well, I'm gonna have to sentence you to death, I guess. It's treason." And then, but then he delivers the letter about the Night's Watch, and it's actually Melisandre who's like, "This is significant.
Mm-hmm.
We should react to this." And she's like, "You should not have Stannis killed. He might come in handy."
Have Davos killed.
Yeah, Davos, yeah. And so he doesn't. That's the end. And the only other thing that we have in this season is Misa.
Oh,
the
Misa.
white savior herself.
It means mother.
Yeah, very cringy scene, in my opinion.
I don't know that it's supposed to be.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's what they're going for. And she just had, so basically what's happening for people who haven't seen it, but it's like all the people come out from Yunkai and they just are basically worshiping at the feet of Daenerys. They lift her up as a savior, and there's literally a shot of just this white speck in this ocean of brown people.
Which there was controversy over the casting and the directors.
Well, that's ridiculous because they all should be brown because that is where they are in the world.
Well, the directors were just like, that's just who shows up at a casting call. And
dumb. They should just come clean and say this is who we cast for this scene because that's what makes sense. Yeah,
I think they didn't want to tip their hand about.
God, they're such idiots. Every single time. I think that they're great showrunners. I think they do it amazing. They've made my favorite show of all time. I think they're very good at their jobs. I think they get a lot of outsized hate for their work. But every time they open their mouths, they
make it worse.
Yeah, they're the worst communicators I think I've ever seen when it comes to this kind of thing. Maybe up there, maybe not quite as bad as the Witcher showrunner, because they also every single time they open their mouths, it was bad too. But
I think they definitely make a lot of mistakes and they get worse as they go. But they maybe get a little more hate than they deserve.
And they have no one to blame but themselves because of the stupid things that they say.
Such stupid things they say.
But anyway, yeah, I think the thing about this scene that is important is that Daenerys has just such glee at this happening. Like she's like they're lifting her up, right? They're lifting her up, and she is just never been happier about being this savior. So that is, I think, is that because she definitely closes out season 1 and season 3. I can't remember if she is the final thing on season 2, but I wouldn't be surprised. They like to leave us on Daenerys for some reason.
I don't remember.
I don't think so. I think the end of season 2 is something else because what could she possibly do? She's been in Karth. They couldn't possibly end it on her.
I think the season 2 finale was the only one so far that I didn't get to rewatch. With
okay, sure.
So I don't recall.
Okay, so that is season 3 of Game of Thrones.
All right.
Okay, I have my top moments from season 3, and I only have 8. moments,
Okay.
which is the exact same number that I had from season 2. I thought that I would have more than that.
You definitely sounded a lot harsher in season 2.
Did I when we were doing our wrap ups? I did. Well, I don't know. I mean, I was pretty harsh on some of the filler stuff in season 3 as well. But the thing is, like, they both have good standouts, and obviously both are still good seasons of television. But I was surprised. I really think season 1 pretty easily carries it so far out of the first 3.
Okay.
But mine, so I guess start from the bottom. Number 8. This is from the 4th episode. I called it Varys Revenge, which is
Oh,
whenever
the
he
box.
has the guy in the box. It's kind of a weirdly forgettable scene because it kind of comes out of nowhere and it's never brought up again.
Yeah, I did not remember it was in the box.
Yeah.
Which is cool. Got to experience it all over again.
And we kind of talked about it already, where it's just basically the guy that cut him all those years ago, and after all these years, he's finally getting some revenge on him. So we never see what he actually does to him other than have him in the box, but get the idea.
Not good.
hmm okay, then number 7. Really didn't, when I was thinking about moments going in, this wasn't one that immediately jumped to mind, but whenever I was going back through and taking my notes, I was like, this is kind of a notable moment that I think is worth putting on the list, which is when John turns on the wildlings. And it's in episode 9, so, shortly before the Red Wedding. But particularly, like, Summer comes and helps him and stuff. I don't know. It's a
Yeah.
cool sequence, kind of how it kind of lines up with the brand stuff, even though obviously I'm very critical of that storyline. It's kind of cool to see them intersect in this way. They're going opposite directions.
Screaming, no brand stop.
Yeah. And honestly, I'm not super crazy about John's wildling arc either. But it's got a kind of this dramatic conclusion, which I think is good. It has been building, obviously, for an entire season, so it's kind of the culmination of that. Um, so I don't think either one of those would have made it on their own, but because they intersect, give credit. Number 7, number 6, which is one that maybe you think should be higher. Number 6, I have the bath time confessional with Jamie and Brienne.
Oh, I thought for sure you were gonna have Olena's introduction as soon as you said I think it should be higher.
Oh, no.
I like the bath time confessional. I will say a little bit of unnecessary nudity. I get they're in the bathtub though.
Well, you don't actually see Brienne. I guess you see her from the back.
She stands up naked for a hot minute. Enough for me to go, they cast a really beautiful actress for Brienne the Beauty.
I see. Yeah, well, kind of like what we talked about before, the performance from that guy that plays Jamie really carries it for sure. And I do think it's held back a little bit. I think it would hit harder if we didn't have the war story scene from season 1. But like we said earlier, it's significant also for the relationship building between those two characters. So.
This started off a little creepy with like, get your own bathtub.
That's what she's
She did
saying.
not invite you.
Yeah, she was not happy to see it. Anyway, good scene. Number 5 is where I have Elena's debut.
Oh,
Top 5 of the season, not bad.
she's so entertaining.
Yeah, she is. It's a show stealing scene for sure.
I am a Tyrell girly through and through.
Yes,
The Tyrell women, to be
right.
specific. Although the Tyrell men are entertaining
Are they?
in like a very different way.
Okay, number 4, I have Daenerys' new army, where she gets the Unsullied. Her best moment, I think, at this point of the show, definitely her most empowered moment at this point, where she takes the entire army for the low, low price of death.
A girl I was talking to before you, I think that was her top moment in the whole series.
The whole series, yeah. I
But
could
she was a big Daenerys
right. If
fan.
you are a big Daenerys fan, I can't think of too many more moments she has in the entire show that are better than this.
Yeah.
So that's fair. Um, I think it's a little silly some of the cinematography of it. There's especially that shot where she's standing in front of the fire and it has like this kind of a slow-mo thing, like the freaking Power Rangers. Um, but it is still entertaining, and then also I think kind of important for the psychologically for Daenerys' character, where it's kind of her lust for violence couched in justice is the way that I kind of look at it. And it definitely sets the stage for the continued progression of that character along those lines.
I think you maybe overstate her penchant for violence a little bit. Like, I think it has to be specific.
Well,
Like, she is not eager for violence against anybody. Um, but that's just a different interpretation we have.
yes, it is. Number three, I mean, to be fair, yeah, it's not just about anybody. It's about against people who she considers to be her enemies, people that she thinks has it coming.
And not just her enemies, but like the enemy of the downtrodden.
The enemy of who she views as worthy of being avenged.
Okay.
Number three, though, you might think it'd be higher, but I mean, top three, pretty damn good. Chaos is a ladder.
Oh.
I mean, obviously, even though I don't have that many scenes, like these top four, they're all like would be very high in terms of just of all the moments of the show, which I will have that list. That'll probably be its own episode, honestly, where I just go through the moments, and you could be there for it or not. But yeah, obviously we did it justice earlier, I think, but it's just the culmination of Littlefinger's little meetings with Varys in the throne room.
Which are awesome, all of them.
Yeah, they're all great. The first one is a great moment too because it's the first time it happens and obviously something that you don't get in the book. So they're all highly entertaining. This is definitely the best one. And also the reveal of how he killed Roz is cool, but also just the fact that she's dead because I think that she sucks. So that might give it a little extra bonus points as well. And a big part of it also, I think, and whether people realize it or not, is the music that's under it. And it's so good. It's similar to what they do with Cersei's character in a few other seasons, obviously not quite on that level, but it is the song that plays under there is Littlefinger's theme for the rest of the show.
So you're so good at recognizing that. It just works subliminally on me, but you're always able to pick those out.
Yes. Okay, my number two. Definitely, I don't think most people would put this above Chaos as a ladder. It's definitely a more low-key choice.
Serious.
But I think it is so unbelievably good. I know there's at least one person that agrees with me. His name is Brett Fox.
Serious.
I called it Catelyn's Failure, which is where she talks about Jon Snow's sickness.
Okay. I thought you were going to say Sam killing White Walker.
Oh, no.
Because Brett Fox is into it.
Well, yeah, he enjoys Sam, but he thinks this scene is so good, and I agree with him. It just comes out of nowhere. It's like it's show exclusive, absolutely show stopping, and it's Catelyn and Talisa of all people, which I think is interesting. She's part of. I mean, I don't give Talisa a ton of credit here because she just kind of sits there and listens, but she is in some of my favorite moments of the show. I really like the one where she kind of tells her backstory to Rob, like I talked about in the last list, but. This was even significantly better than that even. So basically what Catelyn did is she prayed for Jon Snow to be killed because she was so upset whenever Ned came home with him. And then he gets the pox. And she says that she realized she was the worst woman in the world. So she stays up with him all night. And she like knits him one of those things. That's what like brings it up. Is she's knitting one of those things for, I guess it's supposed to be for Bran and Rickon who are missing.
Yeah.
And so she stays up with him all night and prays that he'll live. And she says that if she tells the gods that if they let him live, then she'll love him like her own son, and she'll have Ned call him Stark, and like formally adopt him.
And then he does live.
And then he lives, and she
can't.
doesn't keep her promise.
She can't follow through. She can't make herself.
And
it's very interesting psychologically.
It's a really great scene anyway, but it's also interesting in terms of her psyche because she attributes in this scene, she says, all of the horror that has happened to my family is because I couldn't love a motherless child. So she clearly believes in like karma or something or fate. And so she just thinks that like all this stuff is happening is like her fault somehow. which is very interesting. And like I said, it comes out of nowhere, but I think show-wise, certainly, I mean, I guess you can count the Red Wedding, which is not number one, but I think this is her best work.
Yeah. That actress does a really beautiful job with it. And it is a deviation. It's not in the books, and Catelyn is a little bit different in the show than the books, but this
Yeah,
is
but she does
probably
not
the
like
best
Jon Snow in
game.
all of them.
Oh, absolutely.
Mhm. Yeah, it's an amazing scene. Definitely. Like in the book, it would have just been something that she probably thought about her, like ruminated on herself if it was in there at all.
Mhm.
But like she's basically telling the audience we're in Talisa's shoes here. We obviously don't know about this story, and
Mhm.
then her like telling us about it's just man, it's just so good. And part of that is probably also because I think Jon Snow is awesome. He's one of my favorite, if not my favorite, characters in the show. And so like for her to be talking about him in that way, and it's also just like a payoff of obviously episode 1 and 2, where she
Mhm.
clearly has some disdain for him.
Yeah.
And it also goes back to stuff that we won't reveal yet about Jon Snow, but
Mhm. Well, and it's cool that this is the thing that she is most hated for, is being hard on Jon Snow. And so it's cool to see that she is also hard on herself about that. And she's aware that it's wrong, but she just can't help it.
yep. Man, so good. What a great character. Okay, and then number 1, of course, is the Red Wedding. Perhaps the most infamous scene in all of Game of Thrones. We kind of talked about how it ups the ante of death with Ned Stark by killing 2, and maybe 3, depending on how you count, of the main characters instead of just 1. And like we said, the best chance that viewers had to see the Lannisters defeated up to this point. And we talked about how, for me, and I think you agreed, that it's actually the death of Grey Wind that upsets me the most.
Yeah.
But either way, just the shock and the boldness of the storytelling are to be lauded. And I think it is a scene. Not, I wouldn't say every Game of Thrones scene lives up to kind of the hype that there is around it in the nebulous, I guess. But I do think the Red Wedding does live up to it. It's definitely a scene that's worthy of all that praise.
And I think some people get the wrong takeaway from how successful the Red Wedding is. Like there's something in The Witcher I'm thinking of, that season 2, where it feels like they just like made a bunch of casualties happen because they thought that the shock value of something horrible happening is what made the Red Wedding great.
And the great thing, yeah, because if it's done well, then it's awesome. But yeah, it has to mean something. A good example is like the killing the 13 in Karth. It's like no one cares, absolutely nothing about that. There is, I will say, I'm excited to continue reading The Witcher with you because it's not a Red Wedding, but there is like a scene where a lot of stuff comes to a head kind of in the middle of the series, and it is awesome. And it kind of changes the trajectory of the rest of the books after that. It's definitely not the same after that happens, which is very cool. Okay, so those are my top moments. I will say, obviously, I'm not going to do all my moments put together until we're done with the series. But I think for, like, if you were at just polling the general populace, the Red Wedding would probably be number 1 so far out of the first 3 seasons. It's definitely the most famous scene.
Definitely the most famous.
I think I'm still Blackwater, number 1, even over the Red Wedding. I do love the Red Wedding. I think it's really well done. But the Blackwater is an entire episode long epic, and it's just like there's so much really more depth to it. The Red Wedding is like the disastrous death of some main characters, but the Blackwater is like these 2 forces clashing. You see different angles of that battle, like we kind of talked about last time, and just like the anticipation of it, and then like the culmination of it with the wildfire, and then like the fact that it's not over, and you got Stannis coming in like a badass, first over the wall, climbing the ladder, and then his guys by the end have to like pull him away because it's over. Man, it's just awesome.
I just read an article about that episode and how the director hadn't actually watched the show. He was kind of a last minute replacement. But he like really got it. Like they
yes
caught him up and did some stuff that George R. Martin was like, "Oh yeah, great, all right."
I think that it's not going to be my number 1 episode in the entire series. It's definitely my number 1 episode out of the first 3 seasons, and I think it'll be very high even by the time the show's over.
Okay.
But okay, now we got to rank these 10 episodes from this season. And I think maybe my hottest take is which one I have ranked last.
Okay, let's hear it.
My 10th place for season 3 of Game of Thrones is episode 7, otherwise known as The Bear and the Maiden.
Oh, yeah. Whatever.
I think perhaps a potential contender for most overrated episode of Game of Thrones, just because George R. R. Martin was on. This is why I asked earlier. Now, granted, he wrote The Battle of Blackwater, which is by far my number 1 episode so far. So it's interesting. Now, Bear the Maiden Fair is not like my last place out of all of Game of Thrones so
It
far.
had your top.
Yeah, it did. 1. Well, wait, did it? I don't think it
Yeah,
did.
I think the bathtub scenes.
No, that's not in the Bear and the Maiden Fair. That's before the Bear and the Maiden Fair. It actually does not have any of my top moments. Now, many would argue, and you might argue as well, that the bear scene should be on there. But
Jeanette.
I don't, I don't know. It doesn't really do a ton for me, the bear scene. Like
Their own.
I don't really, I
It's a
don't.
big moment for James' character.
It's a big moment for Jamie's character, but to me, he's already gone there with the bath scene. Like I understand it's him putting himself in harm's way, and and the bath scene definitely is more setting the stage for it than this scene where he's actually acting on it. But I think the bath scene definitely hits me harder, even though it's already um we've already kind of know that backstory, but the way it develops that relationship like we've talked about and just how well acted it is. And I tend to like, I think, with some exceptions, but in Game of Thrones, I've found that I really like the quiet scenes in a lot of cases more than like the action heavy scenes.
So the man with his top 2 is the Blackwater and the
I don't know that the Red Wedding's my number 2. It probably is, um, but see, part of the reason that Blackwater is my number 1 over the Red Wedding is because there's more to it than that. There's quiet moments while the battle's going on, like with Sansa and Cersei, and that's all included.
Yeah, that's some of the best stuff.
And so, and like, well, I guess we shouldn't get into episodes that haven't happened yet, but like, there's other battles that I like more than the one that is the most famous, which I think doesn't have any lulls in it. It's all action.
Yeah.
Whereas there's others that I like more, including maybe the Blackwater, that I like more.
Mhm. Well, and I would agree that I like the bathtub scene more than
The bear.
the bear pit, but
Yeah. And part of it is just because I don't really get a whole lot out of there's not really any depth to the Bolton guys. They're just bad dudes.
yeah,
And
there's a little more to it in the books, but
oh, okay. Well, I haven't gotten there. But it's not just that. So like even like it's still a good sequence, and like that final 4 minutes is solid. But there's not really a whole lot going on in the rest of the episode either. That I think kind of puts it at the bottom of season 3. So like we have like John he's still with the wildlings. It's after they climb the wall, but it's kind of like that gray area where he hasn't like turned on them yet, and he's just kind of stuck with them. So we're kind of like just waiting for some payoff there. I think it's like the one where he kind of is going back and forth with like the war guy, and the war guy tells Ygritte she should be with him and stuff. It's just not. I don't know. That guy doesn't do a whole lot for me. There's not a whole lot
no, nothing.
going on there. And then we have Rob finding out Talisa's pregnant. It's a significant moment for him, but it's not like an amazing scene. And then it's a lot of Tyrion and Sansa just kind of moping around about having to marry each other like it's before the wedding. And there's just kind of like a lot of moping there.
I mean, fair enough for them.
It's also where Theon gets his dick cut off, which is not particularly enjoyable.
Oh yeah, I
Um,
you make some points.
And then also like I guess you have Daenerys. This is where she threatens the Yunkai guy, but to me, like her Yunkai stuff, like I don't know how do I. It's a huge come down after the Fast War stuff, and then Arya gets kidnapped by the Hound, but we don't get any of her relationship with the Hound yet. It's just like we literally like see her get snatched by him, and then that's it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my bottom episode for season 3.
I will say I don't have strong opinions on these because they run together for me
Right.
a little bit.
Sure.
So I don't have like this clearly divided in my mind.
Well, that's why I'm reminding you of what's in each one. Episode 9 or number 9, I have episode 1, which is called Valar Dohaeris. So
Ominous.
they generally, I think, start their seasons pretty slow, which makes sense because they got to like build up to the climax of each season. However, I do think the first episode of Game of Thrones is excellent. But in this one, it's like it starts with the Night's Watch, and they're deciding that they're gonna come back, but nothing really is going on with them yet. We have John meeting Mance Rayder, which is significant, but it goes pretty quick, and also he's not quite as cool as he is in the book.
Yeah.
We have Davos going back to Stannis and getting arrested. That sucks. I mean, for television purposes. We have Rob arriving at Harrenhal, which means that there's the debut of Qyburn, which I do enjoy, but he's not really entertaining it.
Sure.
And then, I guess like probably for you, the high point here would be Marjorie sort of building rapport with the people. I think this is where she goes to the orphanage,
Yeah,
but that's not really a stated out scene in any way.
I disagree.
And then we have
Every
Daenerys.
scene-
And then we have
Very much.
we have Varys and Selmy showing up with Daenerys, so that's cool. But also, he kills a scorpion, and then we move on. Okay, so that's my number 9. Number 8 I have, which is actually episode 8, The Second Sons. So this kind of feels a little bit like filler is a strong word, but it's clearly we're getting ready for the Red Wedding. We're geared up for the Red Wedding, but we're not there yet. So it's just kind of like building toward that. There's like this episode's dominated by the Sansa Tyrion wedding. So like the wedding goes pretty fast, but then like all this stuff with the betrothal, and then is he gonna sleep with her, and then he doesn't, and it's a little melodramatic. Because I don't know. I guess it would have been more dramatic if he did, but
Well, thank God he didn't.
Sure.
Yeah, it would not be an episode anyone would want to watch.
yeah. Um,
Who would ever want to watch Sansa be assaulted? That sounds absolutely miserable.
oh yeah, so miserable. Then we have this is also the episode where Dario Naharis debuts. And original Dario is entertaining enough, I guess.
Original Dario is my favorite Dario.
Yeah.
He still didn't do that much for
Right.
me.
And he's in like 3 or 4 scenes in this episode, so
And I'll say that goes for book Dario too. Like I just don't see what she sees in him.
and then we have
Maybe I'm
Gendry.
jealous.
Then we have Gendry getting leached. This might be your bottom episode for the season, honestly.
God, I hate that. Oh, I hate that scene.
Yeah, I know you do. But it does have Sandkill and a White Walker. So that's cool.
Yeah, that's good. Go Sam.
That's my number 8. My number 7 is episode 3, which is The Walk of Punishment. So this is the last one I would say that doesn't really have any big standout scenes for me of season 3. But it does have like some that I think I look back on more fondly than some of the ones that we've looked at before. Like this has Podrick's little saga with the horse, which is entertaining.
Very entertaining.
And then this is also not when Daenerys gets the Unsullied, but this is her like basically deciding that she's gonna do it. And so that's the ramp up to her getting the Unsullied is definitely I like that a lot more than the go down to young guy of Dario Naharis and that stuff.
Well, of course, yeah.
So I like that. It's also the last time we see Mance Rayder, and he's a good character, so I think he boosts it a little bit. He tells him to go climb the wall and stuff. It's also where Tyrion is appointed to Master of Coin, which is pretty entertaining. He gets a new job, and we get to see him sort of figure out that. And then it's also the one where we have Catelyn's father's funeral and all that stuff, and the big closing point here was Jaime losing his hand. So overall, I think I like these plot lines better than the ones that I have below it. Okay, number 6 is actually the finale, episode 10, Misa. Which I'm not, I don't like that Misa scene very much. But I do think this is a good example of an episode that is where the sum is kind of better than the individual parts, which is, I do, with all this dissecting, I do focus a lot on the individual parts.
Mhm.
But I think that this episode, when you kind of look at it as a whole, is stronger than some of the ones below it. We get a lot of the fallout of the Red Wedding, which obviously is still very raw in everybody's mind.
Yeah.
And so that's fun to see like how all the different factions are reacting to that, because obviously it's a game-changing event in the world.
Yeah, this episode has a tough job of
Mhm.
keeping your interest in the show, keeping your hope alive.
That's true.
After this devastation, it's gotta give you something to cling on to.
Mhm. It does have, it's got Bran's little run-in with Sam and Gilly, which is, as far as Bran stuff goes, certainly very high on the list of the more entertaining things he does.
Definitely, when Sam recognized.
Mm-hmm. And then it's also where Davos is kind of bonding with Gendry, which is kind of entertaining. And then like really, it's a pretty good episode for Davos because he's reading the notes and he's kind of going rogue, setting Gendry free and stuff, and almost gets killed for it, but then he doesn't. So I'm a big Davos fan. And then it's also like the kind of the dramatic end of I guess you could call it the breakup of John and Ygritte, where she puts some arrows in him.
Very sad.
You know. So all that stuff is very good, especially when you like put it all together and like this is the last episode people are going to see until season 4. I think all those are like good threads that people are going to be wanting to see how it plays out. Like it puts John back in the Night's Watch. That's exciting. We've got Sam and Gilly who have made it to the Wall. That's exciting. And, he has that kind of thing with Maester Aemon too, which is good. We have Stannis sounding like he's going to answer the call of the Night's Watch, which is very interesting.
First.
And then obviously just like all the Red Wedding stuff, everybody grappling with that. So all that stuff I think is like well done it's a really good example of a finale season episode to set you up for the next season, which I do think hopefully, at least on paper, my expectations is the best one so far.
Okay.
Out of it would beat all these.
Well, and I do think that it was the right call to split up A Storm of Swords, the third book, into 2 seasons. This is not where that book ends. And I
Interesting.
think it's a really jam-packed book, really fast-paced, and giving it some time to breathe, I think was a really...
Well, it was, I don't think, I would be shocked if they had any plans otherwise of, like, you can't just put the Red Wedding in the middle of a season,
Sure.
So, like,
That was
that
the
has to
thing.
be the climax.
It's like that was what they
Yeah, which that's with good reason because it definitely paid off. The only thing I'm not super crazy about in this episode, it does have the Misa scene, but in a way that's you're kind of not supposed to, like you said, maybe not supposed to be super jazzed about that.
It's supposed to give you an off feeling.
Well, it does for sure. It always has for me. Okay, so that's my
I
number.
hope it's supposed to.
Yeah, otherwise they fucked up. Yeah. Well, and I think there probably are a lot of people who, are thrilled by that. All the Daenerys stands.
It's the first time through, but that's all. Well, I think I even once feel there.
Okay,
I will say
that's my number 6. So top of the bottom half, bottom of the top half, I have episode 5, which is Kissed by Fire. This is the one where we have Brienne and Jaime in the bath.
okay.
So that definitely boosts the scene quite a bit. But then a lot of the subplots are also good here. It's got like the Hound versus Beric Dondarrion, which is entertaining enough. And then we have John's consummation, if you will, with Ygritte in the cave. So that's good. We have Rob beheading Rickard Karstark, so that's a big moment for him. Like I considered that for a standout moment. It wasn't quite there for me. I'm pretty picky with what I pick for moments that make it into that tier, just because I know later on in the series there's a lot. But I'm trying to compare them against that. But it is like a cool scene. Like it's pouring down rain, and Karstark is just completely defiant, and everybody says this is a bad idea.
Yeah.
But Rob looks cool while he does it, so definitely a little bit of a mixed emotions there.
Yeah. To both start and something that will happen a little bit later.
Yes, and that one is my favorite by far. And also Theon.
And I almost said Theon. I
Yeah.
didn't know if he deserved it.
This is also the introduction of Stannis' family with his wife and daughter, which I think is significant and notable.
Yeah.
And also Grey Worm.
Speaking of Stannis' family,
Yes.
I want to say Shireen teaching Davos to read is a top moment for me.
That's fair. They definitely
love
have
their
some good stuff.
dynamic.
Yeah, I agree. They're definitely it's up there. They're definitely great characters, and really great together. And then another thing with this episode is you can't really boil it down into one scene, but I really love this subplot. And this is the episode I think where the most of it happens, where it's like the jockeying for position. It's kind of a triple threat between Littlefinger, the Tyrells, and the Lannisters about what's going to happen with Sansa. And it's just like really well done this season. But there's not like one moment to pull out from it other than, obviously Chaos' Ladder. But so the culmination of it, I guess. But this is where they're really setting the stage for all that stuff. And I think it's really well done. A lot of great Varys stuff for this episode, which I'm sure Brandon was a fan of. Okay, so that's my number 5.
I
Number
guess the standout moment with that would be Tywin and Olenna's conversation.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good one. Solid.
But I'm also very biased towards anything with Olenna and
That's
Marjorie. So
Yes. Number 4, I have episode 6, which is The Climb. And
every time you say the title, I just think of the Miley Cyrus song.
So obviously the climb up the wall is kind of the main thing here, but then it's also referencing Chaos is the Chaos the Ladder scene where he references the climb. And obviously the Chaos is the Ladder thing is definitely what I think it's one of the greatest moments of the show. And so it's especially after this point. And so that definitely boosts this episode a lot. But otherwise, it's kind of and the climb of the wall is going on as well. But we also have like kind of some building up to the red. This is where we really start building to it, where Rob meets with the phrase. Roose Bolton suspiciously allows Jamie to leave Harrenhal. They're definitely like setting the stage for it. And then of course we have some Theon torture, and that's just kind of something
everyone's favorite.
Yeah, there's nothing you can really do about that in this season. And this is also where Melisandre abducts Gendry, which is frustrating to you.
I wonder for people that are like super vengeance hungry and are like really wanting to see Theon suffer for what he did to those boys, even if it weren't Brandon Theon.
I think there is a little bit of that. I think it's almost like a thing where they kind of put it on the audience where it's like, okay, what's your line? How long until you get uncomfortable with this?
That's what I was gonna say. That's definitely what it should be if you're gonna show the torture.
Well, I think it makes sense for them to do it to that character because yes, he has been up to that point, I wouldn't say the most despicable necessarily, but certainly up there. I mean, he killed 2 innocent children.
Yeah. Now they do play it for jokes a little bit.
Not the torture though.
I don't know. You got him like eating that sausage.
Okay, well, because to Ramsay it is a joke.
Yeah. But that like undercuts it a little bit.
See, to me it doesn't really because it's still horrific, and but then like you see this guy who's doing it where to him it's nothing. Like he doesn't even it barely registers on his day.
Yeah,
which
that's fair.
I think is a credit to that character, but and the performance of that guy who plays him is really good. But yeah, it's not particularly entertaining though, him getting tortured this whole season.
Yeah, it's miserable to watch.
Sure.
If I could only skip like one series of scenes, the torture scenes at the end would be a contender.
Yeah, but there's so much else going on in that episode that it boosts out to number 4. My number 3 is episode 4, which is "And Now His Watch Is Ended," which is impressive. I wouldn't think that would actually be above the climb, but this is so obviously a notable death here with the death of Lord Commander Mormont, probably the most notable death this season until the Red Wedding. But also this is the episode where Daenerys gets the Unsullied for the low price of wanton murder. And that's obviously one of the great moments of this season as well. And then it's also where Varys kind of has his little moment as well with getting revenge on the guy in the box. So I think the combination of those two, where it's like the climb for me, it was really Chaos is a Ladder. This one, you get the awesome Daenerys scene. It's not quite on the level of Chaos and Ladder, but it's close. Plus, you get Varys in the box. And this is also where he's really, again, kind of with the Sansa subplot. And this is where it seems like Varys is really in control here. Like, he's like, he totally rips her away from Littlefinger in this. Now, granted, Littlefinger gets back at him later on in the.
Yeah.
But at this point, it's looking great for Varys. So all that stuff is just very entertaining. And then I think I think maybe it's the episode after this where Olenna meets with, but we do get her meeting with Varys, which is also very entertaining.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's my number 3. Number 2, I have Dark Wings and Dark Words, which is episode 2.
Not the best named episode.
Definitely not.
I mean, I'm sorry. I really like that phrase. I think that phrase is a great name for an episode. Just maybe not this one.
Sure. But this is maybe in some ways, I don't think most people probably have this one as high as I do. It's maybe a little bit more uneven than some of the ones that I have below it. But there's just several standout scenes that I think push it up to the number 2 spot. It is the debut of Olenna, which is extremely entertaining.
So good.
It also has the Catelyn Stark scene that I love so much. So the combination of both of those two alone already kind of puts it up here. And then it's also got like Jamie and Brienne, they have their battle on the bridge, which I considered for a moment, but didn't. But it's still a good one. And then Arya meeting the Brotherhood without banners, which it's not the most entertaining thing, but it's the introduction to those characters, so it's pretty good. And Marjorie dominating Joffrey, all good stuff. It also the biggest problem with this episode it is the debut of Jojen. I try not to hold that against it.
Just think about it like this: glass half full. It's the debut of Mira.
Sure. But anyway, mostly because of combination of Olenna and Catelyn Stark scene, that's a really good 1-2 punch. Put it at number 2. And then number 1 though, Brains Castmere, which is kind of obvious.
Yeah.
I some lists I see it as the highest episode of Game of Thrones ever,
Interesting.
and I definitely wouldn't take it that far. But it's obviously one of the greats. Definitely one of the most important and shocking and well-known episodes of television for sure.
Pretty great.
Um,
Use of music as well.
and a lot of that is because of the Red Wedding itself, and I think that's the reason people put it up this high. But yeah, the rest of it is pretty good too. It's also got the kind of the climax of Jon Snow's wildling arc, like we talked about. Does have an unfortunate amount of brand content, which would not be my pick, but
you said it's your favorite
yeah, it
part
is.
of it.
It is my favorite brand stuff. And then it's also got Daenerys conquering Yunkai, which I think that people were probably pretty into that too. Like there's that fight scene where the 3 guys go in there and are fighting those guys in Yunkai. I guess that's cool.
I could do without that one, but
Well,
I
I
guess
mean,
it's fine.
yeah, I mean, it's definitely not one of my favorites. But if you're an action person,
I'm not.
right? But if you for the action people, like this episode's kind of awesome because it's got the Red Wedding and Bran killing those wildlings. Kind of an action, probably the most action heavy episode of this season.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the Red Wedding has really. What more do you really need to? I don't know what more we can say about that. So that's my number 1 for this season. Okay, so all that's left is we've got to do an update on the dead characters list, and we do have a
Right.
new bottom, a new last place.
Oh, interesting.
And we have 23 characters that are dead now. So we did boost the number significantly. Because I think we were we're definitely in the teens last time. So, but my new bottom of the list is none other than any guesses?
Blanking.
Roz,
Oh, duh.
a show exclusive character, and I do think it shows. Like she just doesn't have.
Any backstory
Yeah,
whatsoever.
I mean the backstory is she's a whore from Winterfell. Whatever. And so it's just the lack of depth, and I would even argue direction. She kind of gets some finally here at the end, where she's like a spy for Varys, and this is her best stuff in this season for sure. But
Yeah, it's just not.
like every time I see her before that, and part of it is just I associate her with some of the worst scenes in the whole show. Like there's like some unnecessary stuff with Theon in the beginning where they're doing their over reliance on sex stuff, and then and really Tyrion, you could even argue. I mean, his debut is it's to her. It's he's chomping at her face. And then there's that awful scene where Littlefinger's like teaching them how they need to do it right or whatever.
I feel like they were just getting off filming that.
That's awful. And then also she's in the torture scene with Joffrey. She's just in some really bad scenes.
Yeah.
And maybe that's not all her fault. Yeah, maybe that's not all her fault, but man, just every time she's on screen, I'm always just like, great, what am I going to be subjected to now? So anyway, pretty clear last place for me. 22, also a new character, is Craster. Just a cartoonishly evil character with no depth at all. And that's what he's meant to be, a cartoonishly evil character with no depth. And I think
he's too evil for a cartoon.
part of what sucks too is like for most of like the really evil characters like that, it's supposed to be like kind of like some serotonin when they're killed, but you can't even get that when he dies because it's right when Commander Mormon is killed.
Yeah, well, that's almost kind of a similar thing with the Theon tortures. It's like, oh yay, someone finally got a Craster. Oh fuck, they got Mormon too.
Right. And you just know that it's not really going to be an improvement of the lives of those women in there. So
Yet.
right. So it's just not good. It's not a good situation. And again, like that guy, he doesn't do anything wrong. I don't think he's a bad character like I kind of think Roz is, but just nothing really to him.
No, I think so, like she makes the show a little worse.
Yeah.
And I don't think he does. I think
Exactly.
he does his role fine.
Exactly.
He's just no one likes him.
Sure. 21, I have Viserys, so he was previously my bottom, so no longer my bottom on the list. Congratulations, Viserys. 20, I have Stone Snake, which was one of those Night's Watch guys with Jon from the second book, because this
Yeah.
is including the books. 19, I have
And it's
Garrett.
your peak of either book or show, like whatever's best.
Right,
is
right, right.
Where you put him. So
19,
otherwise, I would be shocked that Viserys was below him.
sure. Yeah, oh, yeah. Well, yeah, definitely not show-wise. I mean, he's not even a character in the show.
Yeah.
I literally don't think he's in it. Or he might be, but, you know. Like, but it's
Not
really
names.
just... No, I guess there is some guys up there with him and Corin. So, yeah, I guess technically he's in it, but... 20 is... Oh, yeah, that's Stone Snake. 19, I have Garrett. He's the first POV.
Oh, well, he's not.
Oh, not the POV, but the first guy that gets beheaded.
Yeah, in the show.
Yeah. Anyway, whatever. He's fine. 18, I have Jory, which is Ned's right-hand man.
George.
17 was Kahola, which was the Dothraki that almost kills Daenerys. 16, though, new character. Krasnus Monoclaws,
Oh.
the seller of the Unsullied. I could see how you would pass out. I don't even think we even bothered to put him on Brandon's list, and I could see how that could happen because he comes and goes so fast. But I just think he is hilariously written, and like him getting his comeuppance is kind of, like obviously a great scene. And so like you said earlier, I think honestly my favorite thing about it is kind of the reveal that she understood him the whole time.
Yeah. Well, the funny parts with his scenes are Missandei's
Like
translation.
like cleaning up his ridiculous language.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just every time that he was on screen, I was entertained. So
Sure.
that puts him at number 16. 15 is the other Night's Watch guy, Dalbridge from book 2. I liked him more than the other one. 14 was Roderick. He went down in book 2 and show 2.
Oh, Sir.
13, no longer in the top 10, Khal Drogo. And this is even show Drogo, because book Drogo would be lower than show Drogo, or book Drogo would be like, he'd be down there with Kaholo, honestly. I mean, I guess I'd put him above him, but not by much. But yeah, show Drogo, I've got him at, no, but he is kind of, he's definitely got some more charisma about him in the show. That is that actor, I guess. But yeah, number 13 overall. 12, a new addition is Lord Commander Mormont. So not quite cracking the top 10 for me. He's not the most exciting character realistically, but
No.
he is an honorable man.
Yeah. And he's
And-
cool. Like when he gives John the sword, it's
Yeah, it's a nice moment. He's always doing what he thinks is best for his guys and for the realm ultimately. And so that's to be respected. I do think his connection with Jon Snow is his greatest attribute. But I also think it's interesting that we're getting, I mean, there's no payoff with it, obviously, between them. I think it's interesting that we're getting Jorah at the same time as we're getting him, and just like the two Mormonts in opposite sides of the world.
Mhm. The cool one and the lame one.
I don't know if my list would agree with that. I think Jorah Mormont would probably be higher than his father
Well,
on this
Knight
list.
was my top Mormon to the show.
All right, fair enough. Yeah, she's good too. Number 11, holdover, Syrio. 10 was Corin Halfhand. Definitely book Corin, obviously, to be above Syrio. But yeah, book Corin's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
9, I have Yoren. That's more show Yoren than book Yoren. 8 is a new addition, Talisa Stark.
Oh wow.
I know, yeah, pretty high ultimately. She's really grown on me on repeat viewings of the show. We kind of talked about probably in season 2 and in that discussion, but she's essentially a show exclusive character, as she's so changed from Rob's wife in the book that you said George Martin actually requested that they change her name in the show,
Yeah.
which is fair. But I just really think the changes. I know that you like what they do with the wife in the book, but I really think the changes are understandable and very well executed in the show. Like they can't really do the same thing because the mediums are different. Like Jon Snow or Robb Stark is essentially a point of view character in the show, whereas he's not in the book. So you can't really have him getting married off screen because people will be like, "What the fuck happened?"
Well, they
We should have seen this.
Have the same introduction.
But there's just no reason. Well, sure, well, no, they don't really do it that way in the show because like she picks up on what's going on before it happens.
I think that's my biggest complaint. It's just I like the rollout to Catelyn in the books, and so.
But I think the changes that they made are not only understandable but well executed. Where she ends up being in some, I would say, actual standout, list worthy scenes, like where she tells her backstory to Rob and he kind of gives into his feelings for her, and then also obviously she's on the listening end of the Catelyn episode or sequence that I love so much. And she is part of the Red Wedding, so you got to give her a little bit of credit for that. She's technically the first that goes down.
Yeah.
So I think she gets a little bit of bonus points from that. But I enjoyed her character.
I think she's grown on me. I know the first time I watched, I wasn't sold on her.
Yeah, the first time I watched out, she certainly wouldn't be this high. In that first whatever list I did the first time, but over time she's really gotten to the point where I think she's a good character. One of the better ones that have departed so far. But I couldn't quite put her above number 7, which is Renly Baratheon, still in the top 10 for now.
Right.
6, man, he is so high. 6 is crazy, but it's Courtney Penrose. I mean, I'm just being honest with how entertained I was whenever he was that episode. I mean, that's my favorite, almost my favorite chapter of either of the books that I've read so far. Or I guess we started the third one. I just think that chapter is so good.
Yeah.
It's like, it's part of what we were talking about because we're reading The Witcher as well, and I just really appreciate humorous dialogue, and that Witcher guy is just so good at it. And this is, I think, maybe the funniest dialogue that George writes, where this guy is just talking that shit to Stannis, and he can't really do anything about it. I mean, he's gonna do something about it, but he's just like taking it, in the moment.
Yeah.
And it's just like the dichotomy of that, where it's like it's humorous
And
versus like the horror show by the end, where it's Davos with the Shadow Baby.
Yeah.
Just like the dichotomy of that all in one chapter is just so awesome. But Courtney just, God, he's
yeah.
yeah. He's just an honorable guy and also very funny. So I have him at number 6, and then number 5 also kind of along those same lines. I still have top 5 still. Maester Crescent, man, he's up there.
Well, sure. I mean, that's your favorite chapter.
Yeah, so that's why he's there. 4 is Maester Lewin because I mean, much as I love Crescent, couldn't put him above Lewin.
We're big Maester household.
Yeah, I guess so. But okay, so those are it. So we have our top 3 now. And I think you might be surprised a little bit by who my number 3 is. I was a little surprised myself. My number 3 is Robb Stark.
Yeah.
Now throughout, I was kind of reflecting as I was deciding where to put him versus obviously the 2 characters that I have above him. And I do think throughout the show in particular, he is, I think up to this point, the coolest character. I don't really think there's any question about that.
Yeah.
Which carries a lot of weight. Like
I think Olenna is
sure. Like like I think this was Brett's favorite character at this point. You know what I mean? Like this is just for a certain audience. Like he is just checking all the boxes, man. He's awesome.
It's up there for you too. I do remember you.
Yes.
Actually had it.
Yeah.
And I know give it like some like later.
Mm-hmm.
Changed drastically.
But he's really cool, but then also like a good guy. He's like he's charismatic, and he is like his family is very important to him, and he's like good at his job, good at his role at like he's going into these battles with no experience and still beating these people that are like way more experienced than him. So that's very badass.
And he's got a lot of Ned in him.
Yeah,
obviously.
Yeah, and the whole thing, all the stuff in season 1 in particular, where they build him up as the King in the North, is just so great. And like, there's this one scene that it's not, I didn't put it on the list or anything, but it is a standout to me in a way, just because Brett thought it was so hilarious. I think it's in season 2, where he's just like walking through his camp and everybody's just kissing his ass. They're like, "Oh my God, Robin!" He's just like shaking people's hands and just like he's like at the peak of his powers.
Yeah.
And like I don't know, he's just very great in those moments. And he never really seems like he has to work too hard at it either. Like he just sort of naturally is good at all these things. And then also I think his relationship with Talisa in the show is very well executed. And in some ways I think sort of makes the Red Wedding even more tragic, because he did what he did, set himself up for the Red Wedding actually out of love, instead of just, because he thought it was the honorable thing to do or whatever. Which I think is, and, he has to like, he's confronted with it in the Red Wedding, where she's like been killed right in front of him and he's not dead yet, So, a lot of awesome stuff. I don't think he's moved down for me at all. I haven't lowered him in any way, but I just moved another character up, and that character is my number 2, which is Catelyn Stark.
That's awesome.
Now I think part of it is probably the books that maybe she wouldn't be this high if it was just the show.
Mhm.
But it's a combination of the two. Like her high points in the show are very high, her high points in the book are very high, and they're different in a way.
Mhm.
And so when you put them together, she's just an awesome character. And I think probably in my original list, I'm sure I had Rob above her. But when I thought about it this time, I was like, I just don't think I can do that. I think I got to go with Catelyn at number two. And they're very linked characters because in the book, I mean, it's through her that you get all the Rob stuff.
Yes.
And then in the show, even though it's not, she's still there for most of the Rob stuff, you know. So they are still linked in that way.
And they have a cool relationship.
Hmm.
Oh, I just can't wait until we finish this book.
Yeah.
There's so much I want to talk about. And
Um,
if you spoil it, I will find you and I will give you a stern talking to.
okay. But also just like going through the books, just every time that she's next, you know, it's always like a good feeling. It's like, all right, we're going to get some Catelyn Stark next. That's exciting.
Absolutely.
You know. And even though I don't know if, like, I probably have to give the book Catelyn the edge over show Catelyn. There's just a lot of really great stuff that she does in the show that's exclusive as well. Like, obviously, I love that scene with the Jon Snow thing. But if you go back to season one, even where she has like the kind of the bedside heart to heart with Cersei, you know.
It's just so cathartic, your defense of Catelyn and Sansa, because they get so much hate that's
Yeah.
just so disproportionate that just getting some
I'm
respect on
surprised.
their
I'm a
names.
little bit surprised because of all the people that have watched Game of Thrones, you know, Brandon and Brett, like they've never disliked Catelyn.
Oh, people get real
But
mad at
Sansa, I
Catelyn.
can certainly understand.
And it's because people love Jon Snow so much. They're like, how could anybody?
Well, no one loves him more than me.
Yeah. And no one is defending her not treating him the same as all of her others.
Yeah, and I think maybe that's part of the reason that I love that scene so much because I love Jon Snow so much, and so it's very interesting to hear her talk about that. You know,
Yeah.
where she was in the wrong, and that's just how it is sometimes. Sometimes you're in the wrong, and you know you're in the wrong, and you just are in the wrong anyway.
Doing her best.
Yeah. And so yeah, she is an awesome character, there's no doubt about it. And that is she's a hard loss. It's a one-two punch there in the Red Wedding, losing both of them together. That's part of why it's so legendary. But I still couldn't put her above Ned at number one.
Yeah.
Now, if I was doing purely on the books, honestly, I think I could. I think I probably would put book
I
Catelyn above
would.
book Ned. But Ned in the show is just so, I mean, that actor's just so unbelievably good. And then also I think Ned, as much as I really think Catelyn is great, I gotta say, once she's dead, that's kind of it. At least as far as the show is concerned. Like, they don't really bring her up anymore. Like, she doesn't like have like this long tail like Ned does. Where, man, he is just still like his legend is building seasons later in the show. You know what I mean? Whereas that's just not really the case for her.
That's true. In the show, he really continues to permeate throughout the story,
Mhm.
and they just kind of
She's
drop her.
done. Yeah, she's when she, like the Red Wedding, and I feel that way about Rob as well. But like for both of those characters, like that truly is the end. It's a hard cut of those characters at the Red Wedding. So
I have thoughts. Well,
okay, but anyway, the things that I was most excited to get your reaction to was that, and then also the fact that I had that pair, the maid pair at the bottom.
well, yeah.
Yeah.
You made some good arguments.
Okay.
As you described the plots, I was like, yeah, that's sounds worse.
Okay, so that's it. That's our look at Game of Thrones season 3. Ultimately, while I definitely, I think would put it above season 2, but it actually was closer than I thought. It was closer between them than I thought it was going to be. They both have high highs, they both have low lows. I actually think the very peak of season 2 is a little bit better with the Blackwater versus the Red Wedding, but I think there was more scenes that I would put in the upper echelon of Game of Thrones in this one. Like Chaos, gave us Chaos's Ladder, it gave us Daenerys and the Unsullied, it gave us Catelyn with the Jon Snow. So all that stuff I think is better than pretty much anything in season 2 other than the Blackwater. So because of that, I would say that it gets a slight edge, but still season 1 I think so far is my top season as far as the show's concerned, and then obviously I'm also team book 1 over Clash of Kings. So
But we're only
yeah.
250 pages
Right.
in the third book.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Which
Right.
I anticipate would be your favorite
Okay.
so far, but we'll see.
That may be. But season 4 is where I think, I expect Well, we'll see with my analysis. I'm being a little bit harsher on it than maybe I expected, which I guess is kind of natural whenever you start dissecting something this close. But season 4, I think, is where the show is really going to start going to another level. I certainly expect it to be my top season out of the first 4. So we will see whenever we come back, either next week or the week after, depending on when I can find the time to put together the next episode. I am going to a work conference for a chunk of next week, so I'm not sure how much that's going to take out of me yet. But these Game of Thrones episodes in particular, they do take a lot to put together as well. But this was something that we talked about discussing on the podcast, and now we're actually, I guess the Brandon thing is giving us the reason to do it. So I figured it's now or never.
Yeah, I mean, it's something I have a lot to say about and have a lot of fun talking with you about. It's a lot more natural for me than the video game ranking.
Yeah. But either way, for now, if you enjoy the show and you want to hear more from us, please subscribe, follow, like, review wherever you listen to your podcast. And remember, you can write into the show for any reason and have your comments read on the air at controlledburnes with an ES at gmail.com. Yeah, I label your spoilers. Okay, that's it for this one. Until next time, keep it warm.